fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 24th of September. Today, the Prime Minister is planning to slash the most hated tax in Britain. As party conference season approaches and, of course, the general election inches closer, cutting inheritance tax is one of the crowd pleasers being considered by Rishi Sunak.
Russia slams Zelensky's 10-point peace plan, as well as proposals to revive the grain deal, adding to the ever-growing diplomatic deadlock.
The former head of the COVID vaccine task force is warning of a new unknown pandemic that could kill up to 50 million people. We're going to examine those claims.
And Craig will have your weather.
Good morning. Most of us saw some sunshine yesterday. Will that continue today? Find out more in a little bit.
Aidan's got your sport this morning?
Yes, indeed. At the Rugby World Cup, there were sensational wins for England and Ireland. In football, Manchester United's season back on track in the Premier League with a win at Burnley, but there was despair in boxing for Britain's Joyce.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Emily Carver, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, I want to know this morning, Emily.
Yes?
What brings you joy in everyday life? What do you think? I think, well, that really makes me feel a sense of joy.
Well, apart from coming to work with you, Stephen, like this morning, I think it's got to be having a very restful sleep.
Ah, yeah, well, I can understand that. Well, look, in The Sun this morning, there's a list of things which apparently in this survey by some brand which I've never heard of. It's about what brings you joy, and the 10 best things for Brits, apparently. Sleeping in fresh sheets.
That's nice.
That is nice. Got to be ironed, though.
How often do you change your sheets?
Every week.
I try to do the same.
Try to?
Yeah. If it's warm weather, sometimes it has to be more frequent than
I
that.
see. Oh, right.
But, yeah.
Ticking off a to-do list, number 2. Eating a favourite pudding, number 3. Getting a surprise text from an old pal. Meeting a puppy on a walk. Getting a parcel. Being inside when it's raining. A perfect cup of tea. Here's to that one. A good stretch. No. And shutting your laptop at the end of the day.
A surprise text from a friend. Now, that is a joy. That is really a joy. Someone you haven't heard from for years. Just do it. Yeah. It will bring the other person joy. Don't worry about being awkward. You know, just do it.
There you go, you're softening in your old days.
Everyone at home should send a text to an old friend.
At 6 o'clock in the morning.
Maybe not this early.
Do it. But let us know what brings you a little bit of joy this Sunday morning. We'd love to hear from you today. gbviews@gbnews.com. But our main news this morning, this may bring you some joy. Rishi Sunak is reportedly considering cutting inheritance tax. It's a new move to try to win over voters, of course, ahead of the next election.
Yes, the plans will likely make way for the eventual scrapping of the most hated tax in Britain, though Downing Street has been playing down the speculation.
Let's talk to political commentator Peter Spencer. Morning to you, Peter. Look, there would be a lot of people cheering on the sidelines about this one.
There will be an awful lot of joy in Conservative circles if it actually happens. I mean, this particular tax is emblematic and catalytic as far as the Tories are concerned. It is said that Rishi Sunak considered touting this during the leadership election, then he thought it might have felt a bit desperate because he's so far behind. But the reality is, if he had done so, I suspect that the Tories wouldn't have just made him leader of the party, they would have made him a god as well, and his dog. This tax only impacts on those who are relatively well-heeled and those who, and impacts emotionally, of course, on those who are older, shall we say. But then you look at the demographic of the Tory party, and that's exactly it. They tend to be slightly more advanced in years, and they tend to be better off. And so to give them this, not so much a sort of a scrap of meat as half a carcass, is something that they would just adore. And it's one of the very few things that actually would not actually divide the Conservative Party. Practically everything else he's talked about has appealed to one faction and disgusted another. But this one is an absolute win-win as far as he is concerned.
How do you think this will go down with the general public, not just Conservative voters? Because a lot of people will look at this and they'll think Rishi Sunak, very rich man, cabinet ministers, very rich men. They want to pass on as much as they can to their children. But what about, the tax burden on the average working Brit?
Well, absolutely. I mean, of course, the Labour Party are spitting nails about this, not least about the fact that, of course, it does ever so slightly put Keir Starmer on the back foot because this is so far from his agenda. When it comes to the broader electorate, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, I note that Savanta last week published a poll in which they suggested that the Labour lead is higher now than it has been at any point this year. So we are possibly talking a certain amount of desperation here. And if nothing else, I suspect that if Rishi Sunak does come out with this stuff at the party conference, not so much the rabbit out of the hat as a whole fleet, a whole herd of them, then it would please the party, but it would... But it might, what it do more than that, I think it might consolidate its support within the Conservative Party, because as things stand, it's very clear from all the polls that there's quite a lot of Tories who think, actually, I've had enough of this lot, let's give the other lot a go. Maybe the Labour Party, maybe the Lib Dems, and then they'll suddenly think, hang on a minute, this is the bottom line, stick with the Tories.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting tax, isn't it, Peter? We've called it, and it's often been called the most hated tax in Britain. In some respects, it might not affect that many people, and yet it's affecting more than it ever did before. And it's whether you're going to end up paying it or not, it's just that general understanding or conception that it is not fair to be taxed and taxed again.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, that is the point that is made repeatedly. Of course, you paid your taxes all your life, and then suddenly you're going to pay it when you die. Death tax, that is really not fair at all. And it's worth noting historically that, of course, it's what did for the great families. Think Downton, and think how towards the end of that series they were pretty impecunious. But I come back to the point about Tory support here, that when Gordon Brown, the year that Gordon Brown was considering holding a general election, and Cameron and Osborne floated this idea, and there was such a huge uptick in Tory support that Gordon Brown bottled the election, and the rest is history, as indeed was the Labour government.
You suggested earlier that this might be maybe a bit of a desperate move from Rishi Sunak to try and claw back some support. But it's also, as Stephen said, it's a matter of principle for people. It's like ULEZ, for example, didn't affect many people, really, when you look at the statistics. But that feeling of, you know what, I've worked hard, I think other people shouldn't be slapped with extra costs. Do you think that this could actually bring on board people who weren't otherwise going to vote Conservative, or is this just something for Conservative voters?
I think it's very much for Conservative voters. I suspect that those who are not minded to vote Conservative anyway will be even less minded to do so on the strength of this, because let's face it, it is a tax cut which is good news for the rich and has no impact on people who are not so well heeled. I mean, what does it mean to people who are renting, for example? What does it mean to people who've got a little place that isn't worth that much? Absolutely zero. Meanwhile, the economy is manifestly strapped for cash, and if you cut that tax, then what? Then how does that impact on, say, cutting income tax, which would be good news for everybody? There isn't that much money to cash to splash around. If you give it to the rich, you can't give it to the others. Simple as that.
OK, Peter, for now, thanks very much indeed. Love to get your thoughts on that this morning, especially if you don't think you're going to be affected by inheritance tax. Do you still think it should go? I don't know quite how much money it raises. It's not actually a vast amount of money in the great scheme of things.
Apparently it raises about £7 billion, so that's less than 1% of the government's total revenue.
Still more than I thought, to be fair.
But it's not. But the problem, as you said, more and more people are having to pay for this because obviously asset prices have gone up so much, housing costs. I think it's principle, and it's quite interesting to note that many other similar countries to our own have scrapped this long ago.
Well, let us know what you think. Would you back it? Would it swing you back towards the Tories in the general election, or is it just one of those things that you're not really that fussed about? Let us know this morning. Now, the Russian foreign minister has told the United Nations that Ukraine's proposed peace plan is not realistic, while its foremost ally, Belarus, slammed Ukraine as a pawn of the West. That was in an address to the General Assembly. Let's have a listen to them.
Zelensky and everyone who is governing him in Washington, Brussels and London firmly say that there is no other basis for peace other than the Zelensky format. And this Zelensky blueprint can be described in different ways, but it is completely not feasible. It is not possible to implement this. It's not realistic. Unfortunately, Ukraine and its people have become a pawn in the great game of the West to preserve its own global hegemony.
Well, as Ukraine's counter-offensive makes minuscule progress and tensions erupt between it and its European allies, questions are now being asked about the way out of this stalemate and how a deal can be achieved, if at all.
Well, let's see what Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard, makes of all of that. Morning to you, Robert. Is there a chance for any sort of peace plan at this stage, or do we have to remain on a military footing, do you think?
Well, it was very interesting what the gob, if I could put it like that, of Russian propaganda and policy, because it's not clear with Lavrov, a bit clownish always, not quite, one suspects, in the inner circles of Putin and the securitocracy. It's people like Patrushev, who the secretary of the Security Council, really counts. But what he was saying was this: no, we don't like this. We don't like, and several deals have been discussed. One was discussed with Saudi Arabia, which really took Russia aback. Everybody's insisting it's got to be rules-based. You've got to play the game, Russia. They don't like that. Lavrov's terms were, it won't work, because they're really stung because they cannot get back into the SWIFT banking system. And this is why he swept off the table, which I think is very damaging for Russia, the resumption of the grain deal. Sorry to be a bit, it's not too complicated, but the house that Jack built, where is Zelensky today? He's talking to the strong man of Sudan, because he knows darn well that Russia is not doing very well on the propaganda front by holding up hundreds of thousands of tons of Ukraine grain. Chief of the Defence Staff, Admiral Tony Radakin, said to me the other week that 260,000 tons is the equivalent of offering starvation to about 1 million Africans in terms of food aid. So there is this game going on. I think there will be some meaningful negotiations, but the winter will have to come first. And that's when the fighting will, the lines will freeze. They're just about frozen at the moment. There are gains being made, and the big propaganda gain, of course, is being made in Crimea with Sebastopol because the Russians are squeaking like mad about that.
So you're optimistic there will be meaningful negotiations. What does that mean?
It starts the process, but gosh, going back, the real fear is that it will be like North and South Korea. Ceasefire in 1953, no real treaty, no real meaningful negotiations, and that's why they're the great armourers of this conflict, potentially, or even actually. South Korea, enormous amount of artillery. Where's Lavrov going next? We understand he's going back to North Korea to try and seal the deal with the guns and rockets there. Meaningful? Vietnam started in 1968 and it ended in collapse in 1975. No, I'm not wildly optimistic, but I do think there will be talking.
Well, jaw, not war.
Yeah.
Well, so I think it's got to help in some respects.
But whether everybody runs out of ammunition in the meantime is going to be the big question, and that's the big thing for the West. But it's very interesting. This rather. I mean, we've been here before, and I think Zelensky's big fear, as the papers say, and I think it's quite right, that you're going to have Ukraine fatigue. It's dropping out of the news. He knows that, and it's very difficult for a terrific showman like Zelensky. He mustn't sound hysterical now because he will have people peeling away. We've had Poland with this row over the grain. We have Hungary, we have Austria, we have potentially in Slovakia. OK, it adds up, you know, that it's not very nice to have people being nasty on your doorstep.
No. Robert, thanks very much indeed. Good to see you this morning. It is 6:15. Let's just remind you of the top stories this morning. And the Prime Minister's considering cutting inheritance tax as one of a raft of vote-winning policies being considered ahead of Conservative Party conference.
Russia has slammed Ukraine's peace plan proposal, as well as attempts to revive the grain deal at the United Nations.
And coming up, as the former head of the COVID vaccine task force warns of a new unknown pandemic that could kill up to 50 million people.
Just what you want to hear.
So an unknown pandemic. 50 million people. You know, it's much worse than COVID-19. What is going on? Why are these claims being made? Let's talk to Associate Professor of Cardiovascular Medicine at Oxford University, Betty Rahman. Good to see you this morning. How concerned should we be about these sort of comments, Betty?
Oh.
OK, she's frozen. We've got 1 or 2 gremlins in the system at the moment.
I want to know how they've got to this figure of 50 million.
50 million, I don't know. I mean, there has to be... The problem is with this sort of thing is there has to be prediction, and we need to be prepared. And we need to learn, obviously, from the last one to work out what went wrong and how it could all work. But is it just scaremongering at this stage? Because what can we actually do about it?
But presumably they know this is going to go into the press. And so it looks to me like fear-mongering.
Maybe.
50 million. I mean, our modelling isn't always exceptional, is it, in this country and in the world?
No.
So I'm hoping that is a vast, vast exaggeration, but we'll speak to an expert at some point.
Yeah. It's a probability, not a possibility.
Yeah.
Which sounds...
But it's Kate Bingham who's been saying this, one of the vaccine boffins.
Yeah. So,
she's been warning about this, so there you go.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We'll try and get analysis. Sorry that the line with Betty went down, but we'll try and get that all up and running for you at some point. In the meantime, let's get a check on the weather for you this morning with Craig.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, today, very different day to yesterday. Spells of heavy rain, especially across the northern half of the UK. Best of any brightness, really, across the south. So as we start the day, got this area of rain across parts of Wales and the Midlands. This will gradually spread its way northwards as we go through the course of the morning, turning quite heavy at times, and then this rain will then transfer into Northern Ireland and Scotland through the afternoon. A thoroughly wet afternoon to come here. But further south, actually, it starts to turn a bit drier and brighter. Increasing amounts of sunshine, especially down towards the southeast. Could see highs reaching 21 degrees here. Elsewhere, the temperature's tempered somewhat by the strength of the wind and also the rain. Into the evening, the rain potentially turning heavier still across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So watch out if you are travelling. There could be quite a lot of surface spray on the roads. And then through the course of the night, most of the rain will clear its way into the North Sea, leaving largely clear skies across parts of England and Wales, but further showers moving in across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So as we do start Monday, could just see some overnight rain just lingering across the southeast. But generally, for a lot of England and Wales, actually, it's going to be quite a pleasant day. Plenty of sunshine, a few showers around. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, really, a day of sunshine and blustery showers, with some of these showers potentially quite heavy and thundery. For most of us, temperatures generally around where they should be for the time of year. But in the south, in the sunshine, feeling quite warm.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, already conflicting views coming through on the inheritance tax front. Paul says very few people will benefit from scrapping inheritance tax. It only is good for the rich.
Yeah, but is it in principle? Frank says this could go down well with the children of homeowners who will also have a house in the future.
Yeah, and you see, this is the reality of it from Christine. Hi, Christine. Says the whole thing needs looking at. It's complicated and unfair. When my father died, we spent a fortune on solicitors and accountants. I think not only does the threshold need to go up, but the tax itself needs to be simplified. It does affect you when you're going through one of the worst times of your life. And you've got that to deal with as well. So it's just, is it unfair as much as anything else? Let us know your thoughts. Still to come, Aidan's here. We've got the very latest on the Rugby World Cup. This is Breakfast.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Emily. We are on your television, as you may have seen, online, on YouTube, on the app, on your radio. There's lots of ways to get hold of us this morning.
There are many ways. But let's have a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom. In the US, President Biden has rebuked what he called extreme Republicans, saying the party's lawmakers needed to take immediate steps to prevent a government shutdown ahead of next Saturday's deadline. Biden said a shutdown would harm food safety, cancer research and children's programs.
Let's be clear. If the government shuts down, that means members of Congress, members of the U.S. military are going to have to continue to work and not get paid. A government shutdown could impact everything from food safety to cancer research to Head Start programs for children. Funding the government is one of those basic responsibilities of Congress. And it's time for Republicans to start doing the job America elected them to do.
The Home Secretary is expected to raise the unsustainable pressures created by illegal migration when she makes a 3-day visit to the United States this week. In a keynote speech, Suella Braverman will present a blueprint for how countries can combat the crisis and highlight how Britain has led the way in bringing forward innovative approaches to tackling the issue. However, despite the PM saying stopping the boats is his priority, the UK's government policies, like sending asylum seekers to Rwanda, have so far quite literally failed to take off.
And the SNP has said that Sir Keir Starmer cannot credibly offer change unless he backs their calls for a cost of living support package. Stephen Flynn, the SNP Westminster leader, has written to the Labour boss, urging him to drop what he calls Starmer's limp loyalty to Tory austerity. Mr Flynn's letter has urged Sir Keir to back calls for a £400 energy bill rebate for households over the autumn and winter, mortgage interest relief and maintaining the triple lock on pensions.
Time for the sport this morning. Aidan is here. Good morning, good morning.
Good morning to you both. Good to see you.
How did we get on?
Really well. Well, I say really well. Yeah, really well. I mean, look, 71-0 against Chile. Chile are not exactly one of the powerhouses of world rugby, but
71-0.
Yeah, so it's 11 tries, but that's 11 tries. Remember, England have been accused of not scoring tries. They're, basically a kicking team, or they have been in the opening couple of games anyway. But they rattled in 11 yesterday. 5 of them scored by the 20-year-old Henry Arundel. Now, that's 3 wins in a row. Don't forget how badly or how desperately England were performing in the lead-up to this tournament. Now, they've not played really stellar opposition. I mean, notwithstanding Argentina on the opening day 2 weeks ago in Marseille, which could have posed a real problem for them. But despite having 14 men, they got through it. But they got through Japan last week, and now Chile. And now, you wonder, 3 games in a row, especially with a scoreline like that, are they starting finally to build momentum? Are they beginning to peak at just the right time? You have to wonder, because I always said, I said it yesterday as well, that I wouldn't want to face England with a real rugby a country with a real rugby pedigree in the knockout stages when they've got the wind in their sails. So, as I say, 71-0, really impressive scoreline, but it's only Chile.
Who are they playing next?
Next, well, it depends. Well, they've got Samoa next Saturday, but that's not really an important game. They're pretty much through already. But Marcus Smith scored 2 tries yesterday. They made 12 changes, don't forget, England. So this was what you might call the second string. 12 changes from the last match, which meant that they didn't really see Chile as a major obstacle coming down the track at them, and so they swatted them aside. But then if you look at Ireland yesterday, Ireland v South Africa was a different game altogether. That was proper rugby. That was the elite level of what we're going to see at the World Cup. In fact, I wouldn't put it past us. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that we could see these 2 in the final again as well. Bjorn Borg played tennis back in the 70s and 80s. One of his opponents said, "We're playing tennis. Bjorn Borg is playing such a different sport." Yesterday, last night, is exactly what we saw with Ireland against South Africa. It was only 13-8, actually, but it was very close. South Africa's kicking game let them down. But you know what? Ireland, they're the #1 side in the world. South Africa are #2 in the world. That's what we saw yesterday. We saw elite-level rugby at this World Cup 3 weeks in. And I think the winner, notwithstanding possibly France, because they are the hosts and they're very, very dangerous and they're #3 in the world, but I think the winner could have come from that match yesterday.
Just in a minute, Aidan, why is it that England has been on a slow burn with this? Because we saw this with the Lionesses as well, didn't we? This sort of slow burn, you think, we're not going anywhere, and then all of a sudden it builds up.
Well, because I think it's a good question. I think it's about the opponents, actually, Stephen. Sometimes if you're playing against a team that isn't allowing you to play your best game, you don't have to excel yourself, you're not going to show your best form, but you can only beat what's in front of you. I wasn't sure England were going to beat Argentina 2 weeks ago. I really wasn't. So to win with 14 players. They kind of earned the right to take it a little bit easier in the second and the third game. But you know what? When you keep rattling up those scores, and you've got young players like Marcus Smith and Henry Arundel rattling in tries like that, going over the line, that builds momentum, and who knows where it could take us.
Lovely stuff, Aidan. Thank you. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Thank you.
Still to come, should the royal family increase security following a protest at the palace yesterday? Talk about that in Headline Makers, which is next.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 6:30. Good morning to you. Our top stories today. Could the most hated tax in Britain be getting the chop? It's one of the new policies the Prime Minister is apparently considering as the Tories prepare for party conference.
Yes, and Russia tells the UN that Zelensky's peace plan, along with proposals to revive the Green Deal, are unrealistic as the diplomatic deadlock grows.
And the UK's biggest boat show ends this weekend. Our reporter Jeff Moody has been there. We'll bring you a full update.
And of course, you can join all of our discussions that we're having this morning. Please do email us, gbviews@gbnews.com.
And you're all getting in touch this morning, of course, about inheritance tax. Robin, hi Robin, says the average house price in the UK is $288,000. Inheritance tax starts at $325,000. This is much more than just a rich man's tax.
Oh yeah, thousands and thousands of people are going to be drawn into this, I think, over the next decade or so. What does Liz say? Liz says, this tax can affect divorced people a lot. When you're a married couple with a house, you can leave up to £1 million to your children, but if you're divorced, you can only leave $500,000 to them. Yes, I don't understand this, actually. Is this to encourage people to stay together?
Well, no, but it's $500,000 per parent, isn't it?
No, but you can give £1 million to your children if you're married, without tax.
Yeah, well, no, but it's per parent.
Right, OK.
So it's $500,000 per parent.
OK.
Sort of thing. So if your house is worth $1 million, well, yeah. So if you've got divorced parents, you'll get $500,000 from each of them.
OK.
You'd still get your $1 million.
OK, so you'd still get the same amount?
Yeah.
OK.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. What does Alan say?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Alan. Guess is Welsh, Alan, the way you're spelling Alan with a U. You spend all of your... You see, this is it. You spend all of your life struggling to build whatever wealth you amass. You spend all your life paying tax for everything, and then at the end they decide to take a huge chunk of your family's inheritance. How can this be fair? And that, Alan, says it all, I think. That's the problem. It's taxed on money that's been taxed about 5 times already.
Exactly.
And that just doesn't seem right. It doesn't matter whether you're inheriting, vast amounts of money or something just over the line on inheritance tax. It doesn't seem right.
But if you're of the socialist persuasion, you'd say that inheritance is the most unfair thing ever. Why should you benefit from your parents' wealth, from your parents' assets?
Because
the state should take it away.
Yeah, but parents, you want to provide for your children, don't you? That's the
natural instinct.
But anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. Quick scout through the front pages this morning. The Sunday Mirror leads on a former nanny to Boris Johnson, claiming Carrie sacked her for boozing with Boris.
The Observer says Sunak pushes to axe HS2 link ahead of the Tory conference.
And Daily Star Sunday says there's a nasty... Oh, no, I'm not doing this one.
And joining us...
I should have pre-read that. That's not... Take that out of the papers.
It's 6:33 in the morning.
Don't need that sort of...
Let's go through the day's headlines.
Toilet humour.
With the deputy editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers, and we also have the writer and commentator Candice Holdsworth.
Morning to you both.
Morning.
Away from that awful story. Can I get your views on inheritance tax? Fraser, what do you mean? Is this a vote winner, do you think, or is it just benefiting the rich, or how do you view it?
Yeah, I think, I do understand the point that inheritance is inherently unfair and, you've been taxed all your life and you're being taxed again. That feels wrong to a lot of people. But at the same time, maybe taxing unearned wealth is probably better than taxing other things if you have to tax something. That's my only... stop to inheritance tax.
Candice?
There's lots of interesting arguments. I mean, I look at my grandfather's generation, and his was the first generation to actually own a home, with Thatcher's right to buy. And he was able to actually leave something to his children, which had never happened before. I mean, he'd never been left anything by his parents had never left anything, maybe a bit of furniture. And in that way, it can drag people up, actually, into wealth, because wealth is built up over generations. That's a fact.
Yeah.
It's politically hard, isn't it, for Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives when you're taxing working people so much to then be seen to make this change that will benefit those with assets.
Well, except if some of those the assets don't have to be that huge.
No.
Yeah.
And with house price inflation, actually, you have people who aren't really that cash rich but have pricey assets.
Yeah. People who don't think of themselves as wealthy at all, sitting on a lot of money. And so, that's why it's sort of problematic.
Well, keep your thoughts coming through on that one. Let's have a look. Should we talk Brexit? A bit of Brexit. This has been out on X this morning, Twitter to you and me. There's been a Remainer rally dancing outside Parliament. Can we have a look at that? Go on, Sebastian. There you go.
Oh, there we go.
I mean, look, it's very lovely.
Yeah,
Candice.
they're enjoying themselves.
They're having a lovely time.
It really is an identity now. I mean, people are very vested in themselves as part of this movement. I mean, you see there's like a real group identity there, and they feel very exalted in their position.
I mean, good
They look like they've been on the, can I say, wacky backy?
Well, I think they could possibly... I think you're lining yourself up for a court case there, but be careful. It's a bit odd.
It is very strange, and there's always been these sort of hardcore Remain types, and they have the blue berets and the stars and stuff, and star face paint, and they've been going on marches for years, ever since pretty much from the week of the Brexit vote onwards.
I mean, they're going to be doing it for the next 20 years.
I think so. I mean, the thing is, there was about 3,000 people attended that march yesterday. Not very many. So I think we can be a bit. Rest assured that we're not going to rejoin the EU anytime soon, if judging from that. But the danger is, politically, that we have more like a kind of zombie Brexit. I don't think we'll rejoin the institutions, but I think, many of our politicians, whether that's Sunak or Keir Starmer in particular, seem like they don't really want to diverge from the EU at all. That's what Keir Starmer says.
Well, he definitely doesn't. No.
He wants to use the EU to deal with the small boats problem. So I think that is where, Brexit could be watered down rather than full-on rejoin. Even Ed Davey from the Lib Dems says we're not going to join the EU.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that the Labour's been very keen to point out that although there's been this divergence issue, that there are still their red lines, no joining the single market again, no freedom of movement again. I mean, they're important red lines, aren't they?
They are. I thought, from what reports have said, I mean, Tony Blair, who's sort of guiding Keir Starmer in his election strategy, they think that sort of having this closer relationship with the EU is a vote winner. And you wonder why. Is it because they think people have become disillusioned with Brexit? Or are they sort of leaning into the forever Remain people? Is it actually a viable election strategy? Have they judged that correctly? I wonder.
Oh,
Well,
no
these
idea.
people may feel emboldened by what Keir Starmer's
Well,
been
that's
saying.
3,000 votes. 3,000 votes.
Yeah, but there are, to be fair, a lot of people who wish we hadn't left the European Union and would want nothing more than another chance to vote.
I think the Remain campaign, or the Rejoin campaign, or whatever you want to call it, has been very successful in painting basically all of the post-2020 problems as a result of Brexit. And you could see this in the polling when people start saying, oh, I regret leaving the EU, was around the kind of time post-lockdown when there was sort of fuel shortages. Now, those were caused by us coming out of lockdown and the world, world supply chains not really matching up with where demand was going. But people have, in a lot of people's minds, that is related to Brexit. So we have, a lot of work to do to remind people that actually, Brexit hasn't had a particularly big impact on the economy. We saw the revised GDP figures a couple of weeks ago that showed that Britain was not falling behind among, its G7 peers, as has been routinely alleged. But unfortunately, the narrative of everything bad is, from big macroeconomic problems to literally everything in my personal life is down to Brexit.
That's a very good point.
Well,
very good point.
Maybe it will convince a few people by having a little bit of impromptu ballet outside.
I must say, if people...
maybe the arts has taken a knock since Brexit.
If people haven't seen, Ben Leo, one of Dan Wootton's producers, went down to the march and
did he?
had a chat to some people down there.
Oh, did
it
he
made
give
for
him a
very
prod?
amusing content. He asked one chap what he misses about the EU, and that chap couldn't name anything. So
we should line that up. We'll try and
we should line that up for later because it is quite fun. It is quite fun.
Right, let's move on to health matters. It's in the Sunday Times this morning. It's Deanna Davison, obviously you used to work here, suffering from migraines so bad that she's actually quitting her ministerial job as a result of that.
This story struck me because I'm a migraine sufferer as well. I haven't had one for years, thank goodness, because they do go away. But for her, she's just had chronic migraines. And it really is the worst. I cannot imagine getting it at the frequency she gets it, because they are the most debilitating things. What I find very interesting, though, is that they are much better understood. So she knows what all her triggers are. It's things like food, caffeine. She's also able to take medication for it. I mean, when I first started getting migraines, they didn't even really know what caused them. They had no idea. But then when scans got better, they realised, it's something to do with the nervous system.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, your nervous system overreacting to something. And I think that there's more information about migraines now, which is great, actually.
It's not help. What it always irritates me with this sort of thing is the fact when people go around saying, I've got a migraine today, and you haven't.
That's what she says. They're actually two very different things.
Yeah.
It's very different. I mean, with a migraine, I mean, you can start vomiting. I mean, your vision gets affected. Some people have seizures. It's a very serious thing, actually. But I was listening to that Andrew Huberman podcast, which I absolutely love. He's a neuroscientist, and he was saying exactly what things trigger migraines, and that is so good, because I think when I first started getting them, it's like you got it, you just went home from school, you went to bed and you got over it. But now there's a lot of very good quality health information out there, which is great.
I think I've had one once, and I couldn't lift my head off the pillow.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever had one.
Dreadful.
They're genetic.
Never had it again, though.
Really?
Yeah, they're genetic. My dad got them, my granny got them. They run in families.
Fraser, wasn't Deanna Davison going to stand down at the next election?
Yeah.
In any case.
Yeah, and so...
Not to say that she's
I know,
not
but
suffering.
this adds a bit of context to her sort of previous remarks. She basically said she had wanted to have a normal life, that she felt that by being in Parliament, she was missing out on her 20s, essentially. And, when she made that comment, a lot of people didn't look on it very kindly, obviously, because you think, hang on, it's a privilege to be in Parliament, to be a minister as well, she's a levelling up minister. you know, why would you want a normal life? Why would you trade normality for, you know, for this? But maybe, you know, maybe this is the sort of story that she'd been kept quiet. Maybe that was what was pushing her out.
Yeah, it could well be. It is impressive how we are making progress on these sort of things, though, because it's stuff which has blighted people for generations, and you just have to knuckle down and get on with it.
Yes.
Whereas these stuff like that is changing now.
It is. I mean, I knew someone, she was a nurse for 30 years. She just had to get on with it. She couldn't keep taking time off work. It was her passion, but she got migraines. There are so many treatments now. And I feel like health is a huge topic right now. People are so interested in how to improve their personal health. There's a lot of resources that you can look at, which is really great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Should we go to another story?
We haven't got time, really.
OK.
I'll tell you what we'll do. Let me have a look at... just a quick word about this new pandemic on the way. Because we'll talk about... Well, it's in the Sunday Telegraph, so we'll just have a very brief word on it for now, Fraser. But we are prepping for the next pandemic.
Yeah, for disease X, so we're working on, you know, potential ways of getting a vaccine
Elon Musk disease.
Quickly, yeah. Working on ways of getting a vaccine up quickly, drawing up plans for, you know, the sort of social response. And what's interesting is Jenny Harries, the head of the UK Health Security Agency, has said we should behave more like Sweden next time. Less, you know, legal restrictions, giving people advice, not mandating what they do at any one time. And I think that's, you know, a positive thing, because actually, in the end, Sweden had some of the fewest excess deaths by the end of the pandemic, and also let people, you know, make their own choices and let them live freely, and trusted the public
God,
to
I wish we'd had this.
behave themselves.
I wish we'd had this advice at the time, don't
I know,
you?
yeah.
Also, you can just, even if they say this, if something does happen like COVID again, you can just imagine the panic being ramped up once more.
Well, if they're saying it's going to be so much worse.
Our original plan was to essentially let it wash through, and public pressure or media pressure and things like that changed it. You know, that put us into lockdown. So, yeah, whether this actually comes off.
But I don't miss the daily death count. God,
No,
those were bleak times.
They were bleak times, but I still don't know where we were with that death count, because it was people who died with COVID, not from COVID. So it's a bit of a skewed picture.
You may never know.
We may never know, but we don't want to go through it again, that's for sure.
No, thank you.
Fraser, Candice, stay with us, because we're coming back to you in just a sec. But at very nearly 6:45, let's just remind you of the top stories this morning. And a slash to inheritance tax is one of the policies being considered by the Prime Minister ahead of Tory party conference.
Russia has told the United Nations that Zelensky's peace plan proposal is completely unrealistic.
And coming up, the Crime Watch presenter Jill Dando, who was killed outside her home back in 1999, is the subject of Netflix's latest true crime series. We'll have a look at that with Stephanie Tecci. Now, Candice, Fraser, keep your eyes peeled, because you're going to be fascinated by this. Especially being South Africa, or living in South Africa for a long time.
Jewel, yeah.
You will enjoy this, because I know the South Africans all like getting out in the sea, don't you? Coast, if you're on the coast.
Yes.
Oh, it's very South African. The UK's biggest boat show drawing to a close this weekend.
Yes, by the time the last boat sets sail from Southampton, more than 100,000 visitors will have wandered around the trade stands and had a peek at the luxury yachts.
Oh, if only. They might have even tried their hands at some water sports, from paddle boarding to sailing.
We sent our southwest of England reporter Jeff Moody to take a look around.
It's been going 54 years now, and despite some heavy downpours, nothing is dampening people's spirits. Leslie Robinson, who organises the event, says this year is the best one yet.
We've got a load of things that people come and do, because this is a show. We want people to come down and have a great day out. Lots of things for kids, lots of people, even if you're not interested in boating, there is so much to do here. And actually, just coming onto this purpose-built, we build this marina every year. We've got 350 boats on here, about another 300 on land as well, 640 exhibitors selling all sorts of things. So it is an absolute fabulous opportunity to come down. You can hop on the boats. What's nice nice about, what I love about Southampton is it's so friendly. People want you to come onto the boats, to ask questions, come and look at all the things that we have got up there in terms of services and products and the big tents as well. It really is a really fun day out for the family.
It's a chance not just to look at the boats. Alex Wright from Rockley Water Sports will take you out on the water too.
So here at the show we have a sailing experience and a paddle sports experience as well. Anything from paddle boards, we've got single ones, we've got a double kayaks, and we've also got a 12-person paddleboard as well. And then we've also got sailing dinghies, we've got catamarans, double-handers and single-handed dinghies as well.
And of course, if you're feeling flush, you could even buy a yacht. This is the Sunseeker 100. It's the largest yacht in the whole show. It's a little bit pricey, £9 million. But you've also got to factor in the VAT. And people are still buying. Mark Chinnery is the sales manager for Sunseeker International. He says he's still shifting luxury yachts despite the cost of living crisis.
There certainly seems to be an air of caution because, marine finance was very popular many years ago. And I think what we've seen over the last few months is that there's a bit more hesitancy with actually making that commitment. But, it's a luxury product, a luxury sector. And we're very fortunate that we still have a lot of clients that do want to enjoy the lifestyle that boating gives.
And as 100,000 visitors have discovered, you can enjoy that lifestyle without spending a fortune. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Yes, don't know if it's really necessarily our cup. Would you fancy it, Fraser, by getting us a luxury yacht or that sort of thing? And
if someone wants to invite me, I'd be.
But are you all right on the water, on the ocean wave?
I'm okay. Yeah, I like being in the sea.
Well, next summer, luxury yacht, we can all put in a bit of money.
Do you think?
Yeah.
That's putting quite a lot.
The GB News luxury yacht.
Yeah, can you imagine? Oh, that'd go down well.
I mean, I like the idea of it.
Captain.
I like the idea of it, but I don't know how I'd feel actually being on the boat. I mean, I think I'd get very claustrophobic, and having little children, I'd be paranoid. Like, I wouldn't want to go above deck. I'd just be like, keep away.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be enjoyable at all.
No, not with little children. I'd be worried with little children.
Also, have you seen Below Deck? Now, that's a reality TV show about people who work on these luxury yachts.
Oh, is that what it is?
And
I've heard of it.
Lots of naughtiness goes on below deck, and the guests have no idea.
It's disgraceful.
It's two different worlds, above and below.
It's going to put you off your toast in the morning.
Lots of celebrities do that kind of job before they become famous.
Well, look at Jane McDonald. Yeah. She made a name on cruise ships, didn't she?
Yeah. Yeah, well...
Doing not below deck, Sorry, Jane. But performing. It's a lot of the cruises are becoming ever more popular.
They are. There's a bit of a renaissance in people going on cruises. I know lots of people who've booked sort of Mediterranean cruises. I know someone who's booked to go to Florida. They'll go to Disneyland. It's apparently quite cheap as well. It's more affordable. Yeah.
Maybe Emma Thompson will invite me on her next luxury yacht travel trip.
I very much doubt that.
No.
I can imagine you've not been overly complimentary.
No, I did actually tee off on her the other day.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Little bit of climate hypocrisy.
Well, pish posh. Yes, well, yeah, there you go. Should we return to online media? This was on X again, and this I really don't like. Republican activists protesting inside Buckingham Palace. We've got a picture for you of what they did wearing their lovely T-shirts. Not my king, it says across there. Well, if you're British, then he is your king. Well. No, Timmy King. You had one job, man with a T. He even cocked that up. Look, they're making a protest. We're allowed to protest in the country. I don't like it, though, Fraser.
Yeah, they posed as tourists on a tour and then they did the big T-shirt reveal and that's the result. I mean, it's a bit lame, isn't it? I think, in general, the Republic group, I think they give Republicans a bad name. I'm not in favour of the monarchy, but there's something really... that slogan, "Not my king," it's so narcissistic. It used to be the case that people wanted to abolish the monarchy because they believe in democracy, equality, those kinds of things. Now, at the moment, it's, I feel, it's just saying, I feel distaste at the monarchy. Oh, they're too wealthy. Oh, it's too... the pageantry is too much. And often it's very kind of anti... it takes issue with people who support the monarchy. It looks down on them, sees them as dupes and idiots, and I'm not comfortable with that at all. So, you know, the monarchy is not necessarily in the best of health, especially since the late Queen passed away. But it's blessed with really, really terrible opponents who, you know, it seems can't even organise a decent photo shoot.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just sort of think this slogan which emerged around the coronation, all the rest of it, of "Not my king," is just nonsense, because you might not like it, but yes, he is your king.
Yes, I mean, I think the monarchy, I don't think it's super popular, but most people don't oppose having a monarchy. Most people actually quite like it, and I think that they're very out of step with the way that the majority of people feel. Even if people aren't fervent monarchists, I've heard people say things like, well, you know what, the majority of people want it and they're happy with it, so I'm happy with it. People have a more relaxed attitude, whereas I think they, in opposition, sort of, you struggle to see what they're trying to get at. They're not really building a movement of people. It's not credible, it's kind of cheesy.
It's a bit boring and boorish at the same time, isn't it? Really?
Yes, it's not inspiring.
It's not inspiring, it just seems a bit spiteful.
What do they want, a president instead? I mean, I can't say I've been...
Yeah, well...
There is no country in the world at the moment where I've been particularly impressed with the presidential system, to be perfectly honest.
I think that's fair, and you know, none of us particularly like our elected politicians either, or prime ministers. But you know, there's a good argument for having a more democratic way of choosing our head of state. I don't think the public are making it.
However, I would say, look at what we've seen in France this last week, and actually the diplomacy which the King and Queen have carried out, which could not have been done by politicians. They can only do it because they are above politics.
I think we, in terms of being above politics, I think we have to wait and see as far as Charles is concerned, because we know he has some of his own very strong views on a lot of issues. He has, to his credit, kept a lid on that so far. But, you know, who knows when it will come out.
He may be trying to influence behind the scenes.
I want to know what the meetings with him and Rishi Sunak are like on net zero.
Yeah, because
I mean, Rishi Sunak sort of watering down, tweaking, and I wonder what Charles's opinion is on that. If he expresses his opinion to Rishi Sunak on it.
But interestingly, on that whole net zero thing, I think it's really interesting that it's been, you know, pinned as a U-turn and all the rest of it. Net zero 2050 is still there.
Yes, it's like a minor tweak. It's about, you know, with the car deadline, he's moved it from 2030 to 2035.
Like the rest of Europe.
So I think the reaction to it has been very overblown and very over the top. I really do. I don't think it reflects any huge change in position from Sunak. No. He's just trying to inject, from what I can see, a little bit of pragmatism into the debate, instead of all or nothing.
It's quite fun to guess which members of the royal family would have voted Brexit.
Oh, if they'd had a vote.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know. What do you think, Fraser?
I mean, do you remember when the Sun tried to say that... I think Harry voted Remain. But do you think... do you remember when the Sun was trying to suggest that the Queen was pro-Brexit? Sorry, and caused a huge row. You know, it's better if we don't know, I think.
Charles Remainer.
I wouldn't like to say, because I've met people over the last few years who you would swear you'd think they'd be one way and then they voted another. And
there you go.
And lots of families are divided. I mean, I know you're an arch Remainer, Emily, but it's, you know, you can't always tell by how people look.
Yes, I did sneak out to the march yesterday.
Did you?
In disguise.
I thought you were there in a blue T-shirt. Look, thanks both. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. In the meantime, let's have a look at the weather with Craig.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, today, very different day to yesterday. Spells of heavy rain, especially across the northern half of the UK. Best of any brightness, really, across the south. So as we start the day, got this area of rain across parts of Wales and the Midlands. This will gradually spread its way northwards as we go through the course of the morning, turning quite heavy at times, and then this rain will then transfer into Northern Ireland and Scotland through the afternoon. A thoroughly wet afternoon to come here. But further south, actually, it starts to turn a bit drier and brighter. Increasing amounts of sunshine, especially down towards the southeast. Could see highs reaching 21 degrees here. Elsewhere, the temperature's tempered somewhat by the strength of the wind and also the rain. Into the evening, the rain potentially turning heavier still across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So watch out if you are travelling. There could be quite a lot of surface spray on the roads. And then through the course of the night, most of the rain will clear its way into the North Sea, leaving largely clear skies across parts of England and Wales, but further showers moving in across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So as we do start Monday, could just see some overnight rain just lingering across the southeast, but generally for a lot of England and Wales, actually it's going to be quite a pleasant day, plenty of sunshine, a few showers around, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, really a day of sunshine and blustery showers, with some of these showers potentially quite heavy and thundery. For most of us, temperatures generally around where they should be for the time of year, but in the south, in the sunshine, feeling quite warm.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Jeez, I hate
well,
that
loads of you getting in touch on inheritance this morning. Oh, can you hear me? Turn us on. There you go. Loads of you talking about inheritance tax this morning on the emails, because it looks like Rishi Sunak may be wanting to at least change inheritance tax, maybe look at scrapping inheritance tax, and he could announce that before or at the Tory party conference. Is it something you'd back? gbviews@gbnews.com. Let us know.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 24th of September. Today, the Prime Minister planning to slash the most hated tax in Britain. As party conference season approaches and the general election inches closer, cutting inheritance tax could be one of the crowd-pleasing moves being considered by Rishi Sunak.
And Russia slams Zelensky's 10-point peace plan, as well as proposals to revive the grain deal, adding to the ever-growing diplomatic deadlock.
NASA's OSIRIS-REx capsule will return to Earth today and touch down in the Utah desert. But on board, something which could shed light on the beginning of life on Earth.
Excited for that one. And we have Craig with the weather.
Good morning. Most of us saw some sunshine yesterday. Will that continue today? Find out more in a little bit.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I am Emily Carver. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, we're calling inheritance tax this morning the most hated tax in Britain. Sharon says no to that. No, no, no. I think the most hated tax in Britain is council tax.
It's hard to choose, isn't it, really?
I would disagree with that, Sharon, because it's like with council tax, at least you know what you're paying for.
I
don't like it, but I don't hate it.
I despise income tax.
Do you?
But I know we have to pay it, but it was supposed to be temporary, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah, when it was introduced, it was supposed to be temporary.
Oh, well.
And none of these things are ever temporary.
No.
Taxes only seem to ever go upwards. Although back in the 70s and 80s, it went up to, what did income tax go up to? I think they had a top rate of about 80, 90%.
It was something like that, yeah. And all the pop stars moved abroad, didn't they?
Well, this is the issue.
Andy in Dorset says, if you can't benefit from inheritance, what's the point of working hard? You may as well be a benefit scrounger, it's his words, if you're going to get taxed on your hard-earned income all over again.
Craig, did you say Craig's one? No, Craig's written something very interesting. He says, although I'll never be in the position to pay this tax, I believe it to be abominable. This is the reason that I loathe the National Trust. They own so much property, but it was because someone had the temerity to die at the wrong time. A lot of these families were property rich but cash poor.
Well, it's interesting, because Beryl says families who own stately homes often find the cost of maintaining them impossible to keep up with, true, and they end up giving them to the National Trust. I'm more than happy to see this punitive tax abolished if it means more of our most beautiful ancient buildings are saved from dereliction.
That's true. People may have these assets, but they're hugely costly to run. And people can be, you know, quite wealthy on the face of it, but cash poor. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, but also, I think you've got to be careful when you're talking about these huge homes. I mean, look, if it was just these massive mansions, you could maybe say, well, yes, it's all them and us. It isn't, is it? You could have a terraced house in London somewhere, or Dorset, or Poole, or whatever, that was well going to fall into this sort of category now, because the house prices are rocketing so much. So it's affecting, actually, a lot more of us than it ever used to.
And it's worth noting that social democracies, like Norway, Sweden, don't have this tax. They scrapped it. So are we out of lockstep with the, you know, most of the world on this? I think so.
And Keith says, I think it's an unfair tax and is anti-family.
Well, yeah. You should be able to... I do think you should be able to pass on what you have built up to your family.
Should all of it, though?
Well, we could lower it to begin with, couldn't we?
David in Lincolnshire says, it may sound controversial, but I think there should be a limit on how much you can inherit. That should be tax-free, and any remaining money would pay off debts and then go to the Treasury. It might stop people hoarding money and taking it out of circulation. It is quite controversial, David, but, you know, it's nevertheless a valid point. And we're talking about inheritance tax today because it's being touted that ahead of the Conservative Party conference, the Prime Minister may, well, at least increase the limits on inheritance tax, the thresholds, I should say, with possibly having an eye to scrapping it altogether. Let's talk to former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall, friend of the show, who joins us now. Claire, good morning to you. Look, it is fair to say this is a tax which affects a minority of people, let's put it that way, even if it is ever growing. But it's not popular, is it?
No, it isn't, and you're quite right. It affects currently 3% of the population. Those are the ones who are going to have to pay it. But as you've just raised, house prices are increasing, so you could find that people in London, the southeast, the southwest especially, where property prices are increasing exponentially, that they could be dragged into the inheritance tax bracket. I think that it's right to certainly have a look at it. I think it is a regressive tax. I think it is fundamentally unfair. If you have paid tax all of your life, maybe in some cases twice or 3 times, why then have it taxed upon your death? And you should be able to pass on to your children and grandchildren the monies that you have made, the investments that you have made wisely, even if it is only a property, you should be able to pass that on in perpetuity. So I like the fact that he's looking at it. I think it's a brave statement to make, because there will be a lot of people saying, well, this is only a tax for the rich, so why is the Prime Minister looking at it? But I think our whole taxation system needs to be looked at. Quite interesting what Emily just said about income tax. I think that capital gains tax is one that we ought to really look at in these instances. So I think it's a brave move. I don't think it's going to be massively popular. It will only be popular for the Tory masses, but those are the people that he's going to be speaking to in a week's time.
Well, you say that with your political advisor hat on. Do Do you think this is a good political move? Because you say there will be a lot of backlash and it's already, you know, people are complaining that this is a tax cut for the rich, essentially. Do you think this is a good move when working people have one of the highest tax burdens in, you know, since the end of the Second World War?
It will be a good move if he does look at the taxes that affect the majority of the country. I think you can have a wider conversation. You can start with this one, get everybody talking about tax. Nobody likes to pay it, but everybody shies away from it because it's very, very complicated in the UK. So why not then move on and have a conversation about those taxes and the tax burdens that we have in this country that affect everybody else? I think it absolutely is the time to do that. And especially when you are running up with a political hat on, you're running up to an election. So these kind of issues are going to come up if the Prime Minister is looking for a wedge issue for between the Conservatives and Labour, then this is definitely it. So yes, I think that the country really does need to look at taxation. Our system is very, very complicated. It is quite unfair, but we do need to fund the country, so you can't remove tax overall. So yes, you know, it is one of those issues which is going to cause an awful lot of backlash from some people, but I think that we need to discuss it.
I mean, I guess when you look at the polls and how far behind the Tories are at the moment, if you can't be bold now, then you never will be.
Well, it does appear a little bit as though the Prime Minister has been taking some energy drinks, for example. He is talking about banning things, civil liberties being removed, A-levels being redesignated, the green economy that he's just taken a pair of scissors to. So I think that he's really setting out his stall. I hasten to sort of add that the Prime Minister's office didn't want it to be called a reset, but it looks like it is a reset for the Prime Minister. We're finally seeing some ideas coming out of him, which you can believe that he has come up with. He's not just coasting along at the moment, taking in what everybody else has said. This is a more decisive Prime Minister than I think that we've seen. It's taken a long time. It may be slightly too late, that some people will say, but I'm quite pleased that we're now having a discussion about what his policies are rather than what the Labour Party is looking at.
It's been a bit all over the place, though, hasn't it? We've had smoking bans, potentially, then, of course, rolling back a little bit on net zero, now taxes. It's interesting what you say about the tax code, because I was just reminding myself, our tax code is 20,000 pages long, over 17 million words. That's longer than the Bible. It's really one of the longest tax codes in the entire world. I mean, take Hong Kong, it's about, you know, well, I don't know this for sure, but I think it's about 10 pages long. We really do have an overcomplicated system. They could just simplify it rather than even reducing it. That might help.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And anybody that's ever had to do a tax return will know how painful the whole system is. And dealing with revenue and customs itself is particularly difficult. And people will get fined for the most basic mistake. And it's not that they're trying to avoid tax. It's just they don't understand the system that we've got. So anything that would simplify it would have to be better. But I don't know how you do that quickly. And I think this is the problem that the government is in. It is so incredibly complicated. It would be nice. And if you simplified the tax system, it would enable people to move, for example, through seasonal work, because that is particularly complicated. If you want to move from one sector to another for seasonal reasons, such as fruit picking, such as hospitality, then you need to make that easier for people. And I think that that is the way we need to be looking at it, rather than just at one tax for the top 3%.
OK, Claire Pearsall, good to see you, as always. Thanks very much indeed. I get very confused. I always, for some reason, every sort of 6 months or so, I get a letter saying, oh, this is your tax code moving forward, and it keeps changing, and I don't understand what any of it means.
No, I don't understand.
Or how they've reached those conclusions. But you just sort of chuck it in a drawer and think, oh, well, it must be right.
Well, you know, both my parents were trained accountants.
Oh,
so
were they?
They can help me a little bit.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah.
Oh.
They can tell me what these things mean, although I'm not sure many people understand their tax code.
No.
Maybe we're just ditzy.
Well, no, I don't think we're ditzy. Interestingly, this is, if the Prime Minister should be watching this morning, this is what he wants to hear from Sean, who says, I was never voting for the Tories again. But I have to say, ending green policies and reducing inheritance tax are a step in the right direction.
Oh.
Well, that's what this is all about. obviously. It's about getting people who've been wavering, who are fed up, and actually pulling them back into the fold.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And will it work? That is the question.
Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's going to be when we cast our votes at the general election. Now, the Russian foreign minister has told the United Nations that Ukraine's proposed peace plan is not realistic, while its foremost ally, Russia's that is, Belarus, has slammed Ukraine as a pawn of the West in an address to the UN General Assembly. Let's have a listen.
И все, кто им руководит в Вашингтоне, в Лондоне, в Брюсселе.
Zelensky and everyone who is governing him in Washington, Brussels and London firmly say that there is no other basis for peace other than the Zelensky format.
А формула Зеленского – это...
And this Zelensky blueprint can be described in different ways, but it is completely not feasible.
Нереализуема.
It is not possible to implement this. It's not realistic.
К сожалению, Украина и ее народ.
Unfortunately, Ukraine and its people have become a pawn in the great game of the West to preserve its own global hegemony.
Гегемония.
Well, as Ukraine's counter-offensive makes a little bit of progress, questions are now being asked about the way out of this stalemate and how a deal can be achieved, if at all.
Yeah, earlier we spoke to defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox.
Not clear with Lavrov. Bit clownish always, not quite, one suspects, in the inner circles of Putin and the securitocracy. It's people like Patrushev, who the secretary of the Security Council, really counts. But what he was saying was this: no, we don't like this. We don't like, and several deals have been discussed. One was discussed with Saudi Arabia, which really took Russia aback. Everybody's insisting it's got to be rules-based. You've got to play the game, Russia. They don't like that. Lavrov's terms were, oh, it won't work, because they're really stung because they cannot get back into the SWIFT banking system. And this is why he swept off the table, which I think is very damaging for Russia, the resumption of the grain deal. Sorry to be a bit, it's not too complicated, but the house that Jack built, where is Zelensky today? He's talking to the strong man of Sudan because he knows darn well that Russia is not doing very well on the propaganda front by holding up hundreds of thousands of tons of Ukraine grain. Chief of Defence Staff, Admiral Tony Radakin, said to me the other week that 260,000 tons is the equivalent of offering starvation to about 1 million Africans in terms of food aid. So there is this game going on. I think there will be some meaningful negotiations, but the winter will have to come first. And that's when the fighting will, the lines will freeze. They're just about frozen at the moment. There are gains being made, and the big propaganda gain, of course, is being made in Crimea with Sebastopol because the Russians are squeaking like mad about that.
So you're optimistic there will be meaningful negotiations. What does that mean?
It starts the process, but, gosh, going back, the real fear is that it will be like North and South Korea. Ceasefire in 1953, no real treaty, no real meaningful negotiations. And that's why they're the great armourers of this conflict, potentially, or even actually. South Korea, enormous amount of artillery. Where's Lavrov going next? We understand he's going back to North Korea to try and seal the deal with the guns and rockets there. Meaningful, Vietnam started in 1968 and it ended in collapse in 1975. No, I'm not wildly optimistic, but I do think there will be talking.
Well, jaw, not war.
Yeah,
I think it's got to help in some respects.
But whether everybody runs out of ammunition in the meantime is going to be the big question, and that's the big thing for the West. But it's very interesting. This rather, I mean, we've been here before, and I think Zelensky's big fear, as the papers say, and I think it's quite right, that you're going to have Ukraine fatigue. It's dropping out of the news. He knows that, and it's very difficult for a terrific showman like Zelensky.
Do you know what I noticed that? And it's not because Robert is very interesting, makes some very interesting points as always. But because there was a long shot on me, I haven't noticed when there's serious news. When there's serious stuff going on, I look miserable as sin.
Yeah, but you know what?
Do I need Botox?
I have the opposite
problem.
I have the opposite problem because I get told that I grin too much.
Do you?
And I don't know if it's a nervous thing, it's just my face.
It's just your face?
It's just my face, I can't help it.
You've
It's
got a
just
nice
natural,
smile.
just the way my face is.
I can't get that, but I just think, if I had Botox, would that stop me from frowning at people?
Yeah, it would, yeah, but it might make you look a bit odd.
Yeah, OK, well, I won't do it then.
You don't need it.
No, I don't need it.
Doesn't he look young for his age?
I'm 72. I am 72 years old. I have had a bit of work done.
Have you?
Yeah.
A little nip and tuck?
Yeah,
A little bit of lipo?
I'm doing all right for 72. Look, you can laugh all you like. Someone sent me a clip the other day of me on 5 News back in 1997, when most of the people work here weren't even born. There was me presenting the news in 1997. Terrifying. I posted it on Instagram. Oh, no, I did it as a story on Instagram, so it's gone now. Maybe I should post it online on X.
It might have been my first day of school.
Oh.
To be fair, it's impressive that you were a newsreader at age 23.
I was 23 then, yeah.
Well, I don't know what I was doing at 23, not a lot.
No, interesting though, isn't it? But I had a very posh voice. I talked like this.
What's happened?
I don't know what went wrong, but I was talking like this. You've got the picture. You've got the. Oh no! Oh, I don't know if they're trying to tell me that they want to play it on it. I don't know if we've got the rights because it's a different broadcaster. I don't know if we can do that or not. Probably
Surely
not.
we can. It's so sorry.
So old.
It's so long ago.
There you go. When I was doing that, President Biden was a young man. Talking of which, looking at the other news today, in the United States, President Biden has rebuked what he called extreme Republicans, saying the party's lawmakers needed to take immediate steps to prevent a government shutdown ahead of next Saturday's deadline. This happens a lot in the States. Biden said a shutdown would harm food safety, cancer research and children's programs.
Let's be clear. If the government shuts down, that means members of Congress, members of the U.S. military are going to have to continue to work and not get paid. A government shutdown could impact everything from food safety to cancer research to Head Start programs for children. Funding the government is one of those basic responsibilities of Congress. And it's time for Republicans to start doing the job America elected them to do.
The Home Secretary is expected to raise the unsustainable pressures created by illegal migration when she makes a 3-day visit to the US this week. In a keynote speech, Braverman will present a blueprint for how countries can combat the crisis and highlight how Britain has led the way in bringing forward innovative approaches to tackling the issue. However, despite the Prime Minister saying stopping the boats is his priority, the UK government's policies, such as sending asylum seekers to Rwanda, have so far failed to take off.
The SNP has said Sir Keir Starmer cannot credibly offer change unless he backs their calls for a cost of living support package. Stephen Flynn, who's the SNP Westminster leader, has written to Labour asking Sir Keir to drop what he calls his limp loyalty to Tory austerity. Well, that'll get a good response. Mr Flynn's letter has urged Sir Keir to back calls for a £400 energy bill rebate for households over the autumn, mortgage interest relief and maintaining triple lock on pensions. As much as, you know, when it comes to winter fuel bills, and it's going to be another bad year, and absolutely understand the call saying, well, we need that £400 again. I can really understand that. But we can't give everyone £400 again.
Also, it's all well and good the SNP saying this, but they've got a massive multi-billion-pound financial black hole. So I'm not sure exactly where they think all this money's going to come from.
No.
But perhaps people disagree at home, I don't know. I just think, yeah, we've got used to the government being able to shell out every time something gets a bit difficult.
We just can't
But
keep
it's hard for me
doing
to
it.
say, you know, I've never struggled to turn the heating on when I've needed to.
I think for people who do struggle to turn the heating on, then it's got to be means tested.
Yeah.
And we've got things like the winter fuel allowance, which is £350, is it now? Is that right? Let me know. Get means test that. Means test
Why
that.
do all pensioners get that?
You know, there's a lot of pensioners who don't need that money. And I know a lot of pensioners who don't need the money who give it away. They donate it to charity because they're not comfortable taking it. Well, you know, if it's not needed, don't have it. You can't hand it back, though, with these sort of things. You can't give it back. You won't take it.
Well, you could.
Could you?
You know, people say to people who say that they'd like to pay more tax, well, you can always write a cheque to HMRC.
Can you do that and they'll just take it?
You can do that. So if you at home want to pay more tax, you know how to do it.
Oh, yeah, well, there you go. Feel free. Let us know. Send us a picture of the cheque.
Stephen's getting his chequebook out.
I'm certainly not. I tell you what, it's terrifying. But like you say, it's a whole different story. You've got to pay your way, and I totally accept that.
I've almost paid off my student loan, though.
Have you?
Yeah, so that's some good news. I got a letter saying I'm, only a few months away.
Oh, that's the difficulty, isn't it? That's your generation. With all that debt, which I never had.
Yeah, so that acts as... Yeah, but I was lucky too, because I wasn't on the 9 grand fees. Right. I was on the 3 grand fees.
And you still... Right.
Yeah, well,
Heck.
It's a lot of money. Maintenance loans, all of this.
I got a grant. I got a grant to go.
Well, aren't you special?
Well, no, we had no money, which is why we might have got a grant, but there you go. It's quite nice now. Who'd have thought that would put you in a privileged position later on in life?
I think my mum was on a full grant.
Oh, dear. Anyway, look, we better have a check on the weather for you this morning. Here's Craig.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, today, very different day to yesterday. Spells of heavy rain, especially across the northern half of the UK. Best of any brightness, really, across the south. So as we start the day, got this area of rain across parts of Wales and the Midlands. This will gradually spread its way northwards as we go through the course of the morning, turning quite heavy at times, and then this rain will then transfer into Northern Ireland and Scotland through the afternoon. A thoroughly wet afternoon to come here. But further south, actually, it starts to turn a bit drier and brighter. Increasing amounts of sunshine, especially down towards the southeast. Could see highs reaching 21 degrees here. Elsewhere, the temperature's tempered somewhat by the strength of the wind and also the rain. Into the evening, the rain potentially turning heavier still across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So watch out if you are travelling. There could be quite a lot of surface spray on the roads. And then through the course of the night, most of the rain will clear its way into the North Sea, leaving largely clear skies across parts of England and Wales, but further showers moving in across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So as we do start Monday, could just see some overnight rain just lingering across the southeast. But generally, for a lot of England and Wales, actually, it's going to be quite a pleasant day. Plenty of sunshine, a few showers around. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, really, a day of sunshine and blustery showers, with some of these showers potentially quite heavy and thundery. For most of us, temperatures generally around where they should be for the time of year. But in the south, in the sunshine, feeling quite warm.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
All the showbiz heading away with Stephanie Tecchi. That's in just a moment.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
It is 7:28. Should we have some showbiz this morning?
Let's have some, because Netflix is releasing a new crime series on the mysterious case of Jill Dando's death. The famous TV presenter was killed by a single gunshot to the head just outside her home in April 1999.
Yeah, we've never actually got to the bottom of any of this. Stephanie Tecci is with us. Morning, Stephanie. I mean, it's one of those horrific stories.
It is.
That actually does keep our interest going all these years on.
Yeah, it definitely gripped the nation because Jill Dando was like the nation's sweetheart. She was often compared to Princess Diana because she looked like her, but also she had that similar mannerisms of caring, and she was very approachable and very friendly. But it's been 24 years, and this remains a case that is unresolved. We have a Netflix clip right now.
The golden girl of British television murdered on her doorstep in broad daylight.
Everyone had a theory about who was responsible. Criminal networks, mafia, Russian, jilted lovers.
Is this an assassination? Is this an execution?
The Crime Watch presenter may have been assassinated by a Serbian gunman.
Speculation focuses on a possible stalker.
This was one of the largest murder investigations the Metropolitan Police ever had to face.
It was the biggest reward in criminal history in this country.
Today, a man was arrested on suspicion of murder.
Do you recognise the person in the picture?
Anyone?
That's a picture of you, Mr. George.
During the course of the search, we recovered a lot of undeveloped film.
This was an injustice. He did not murder Jill Dando.
It makes me angry that they've taken 8 years of my life.
And that's Barry George, who was he was arrested and he was sent to prison for 8 years for the murder of Jill Dando, and then he was released. Since then, police have not re-investigated this case, so it remains unsolved. Netflix on Tuesday will be releasing a 3-part documentary with new evidence, hopefully to give more light into this investigation. It was the largest homicide investigation we've had in this country. Over 4,000 people have been interviewed.
Wow.
1,300 potential suspects, over 500 hours worth of footage, and we still do not have a killer for Jill Dando. Her brother Nigel is a journalist, and you can imagine for any family member, no matter how long it's been, you do not give up that search. So it'll be quite interesting to see what this documentary does and if it can shed new light. The case hasn't been officially reopened by police, so it'll be interesting to see what this documentary can do.
It'll be fascinating. It's fascinating to look back on something which just shocked the nation.
It did.
So much. Stephanie, we've got to leave it there for now, but thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, guys.
Heck, still to come. We're going to be looking at a traffic jam caused by self-driving cars in Texas. That's in Headline Makers. That's next.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Emily at 7:35.
It is, and it's time for Headline Makers. Joining us to go through the day's headlines is Deputy Editor of Spike, Fraser Myers, and writer and commentator Candice Holsworth.
Good to see you both this morning. We kicked off last time looking at this demo, this sort of anti-Brexit demo and dance. And as you were saying, we sent Ben Leo down to have a look, and this is what he came back with.
What do you think of Brexiteers? Idiots. Deluded. What else do you miss about the EU? Are you saying that Europe needs a bath?
No, with Bath for Europe.
Oh.
No.
Oh, no, I like the EU and I love living here, but I also love living in Spain.
You can't just say 60% of Brits want to rejoin. Where's that from?
No newspaper.
Who, The Guardian?
Everything in the EU is elected.
No one in this country voted for Guy Verhofstadt. What do you miss about the EU?
I miss the economic prosperity that we had. The other countries seem to have recovered a lot better from it than we have.
Germany's in a recession though, and we're not. So how's that true?
I'm not an economist.
Well, there you go.
We can tell where Ben stands.
Yes. His view's pretty clear. But I tell you what, it sort of highlights to me, Candice, it's not to rubbish anyone's views, because the country was always was and always will be 50-50 on this, pretty much. It's the idea that people... They always say Brexiteers didn't know what they voted for. Well, the Remainers don't all seem to know what they're fighting for.
Yes, no, I totally agree. And I think, in my experience, and I'm not saying this in a partisan way, it really is based on my observations, many people I know who voted for Brexit had really looked into it, because it was considered, before the actual referendum result, to be the alternative position. Maybe most people thought that Remain was going to win. So they often had looked into it in depth and were quite informed about it. So it's an absolute fallacy that Brexiteers were completely uninformed. And there were many people in the debates that I had about it on the Remain side who didn't know certain things. Of course, you could say that for the Brexit side as well. But I did feel like the Brexit side was positioned as very uniquely uninformed.
Yeah.
And the Remain side was, you know, all the scientists and the experts.
Right, it was the great unwashed, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's a lot of the hardcore Remainers are really... They're talking about a vibe rather than, you know, they sort of feel good about the EU. It's nice, it's over there, it's like a sort of utopian thing. And then you talk to these people and you're like, do you actually know what's going on in Europe? Because it's actually not that attractive. As Ben Leo reminded people, you know, Germany is in a very deep recession. For a long time, the EU or Europe has been the slowest growing continent on Earth. It wasn't actually all that great, and that's why many people decided to leave.
But of course, Brexit has caused. I mean, one guy was saying he's got a place in Spain or whatever. You know, and for the expats and all that sort of thing, all those people who want to move between countries, things have become more difficult. It's more difficult even to send a. I've got family in Spain. Sending a birthday present over is a nigh impossibility now.
Yeah, certainly. You know, there's no question that Brexit has caused disruption to certain areas, but I think it hasn't been the sort of we haven't taken the economic hit that many people predicted. I mean, if you remember, look back at the Remain campaign in 2016, they said that we would all be £4,000 worse off as a result of Brexit. So, you know, sort of that came from the UK Treasury. That wasn't just a bunch of campaigners. Those were the official expert. That was the expert view, and that, you know, is proven wrong. If you look at, you know, those people clearly haven't seen the revised GDP figures, for instance, that we were talking about earlier. I generally think that it is based on, you know, good people, wise people voted Remain, bad people voted for Brexit, and therefore I'm upset about Brexit because, you know, where does it fit into the culture war? Rather than, you know, an honest look at what has actually happened since.
Yeah, also it's, you know, a lot of Brexiteers were called far-right or, you know, racists or whatever. There's a bit of an irony to the fact that it's actually on the continent that countries are moving to the right when it comes to electing their governments.
And you know, the EU, in terms of its attitude towards external migration, I mean, some people call it Fortress Europe. I mean, it makes Suella Braverman look like Mother Teresa, really, because, you know, the amount of... It's very distressing, you know, when scores of people drown in the English Channel. You know, in the Mediterranean, you're talking tens of thousands of people every year. People are, you know...
Go on, Candice.
I think as well, for me, I also want to... I don't want to caricature Remainers too much, because I know people had very genuine reasons for voting Remain. And very rational reasons, and I do sometimes deplore the polarised nature of the debate, where we weren't able to empathise with each other. And I hope at some point that we can get to that.
Yeah, well, that is what we need to do, actually, because it can't be them and us the whole time.
We can all hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
Well, yes, you can laugh all you like, but it's what we need to be doing. Can we just have a quick look at this in the Mail on Sunday, Candice? Because obviously all the allegations surrounding Russell Brand, and they are just allegations at the moment, is bringing a lot to the surface,
Yes.
including Georgina Bailey, the whole Andrew Sachs affair and all that. All this is coming back to the surface.
Yes, I find this so fascinating. And Georgina Bailey, she's actually been a very interesting voice in this whole debate. So, I mean, she was at the centre of that whole Sachs-gate. I think it was in 2008, where Russell Brand and Jonathan Ross prank called her grandfather, making extremely lewd comments about Russell Brand's relationship with her. There was a huge reaction to it. I think they were suspended. The BBC controller Leslie Douglas lost her job. But I think what was lost was that she was sort of just dismissed. It became a lot about Andrew Sachs and what they'd done to him. As she said at the time, no one really apologised to me. I was humiliated, and it caused a terrible rift between her and her grandfather.
Oh,
he didn't speak to her again for many, many, many years.
Really?
I think he's a very old-fashioned, conservative man, and I think he found it humiliating, and it did cause a divide between them, and I think that's what really affected her. What I find so interesting, though, is that she's actually said that Russell Brand did make amends with her, and that he paid for her rehab when she was struggling with addiction. He apologised to her, so she doesn't feel anger towards him anymore. And I think it's good that we have all these different voices in the debate.
Yeah.
I'm not taking a side,
No.
but I just think, you know, someone who had a very negative dealing with him, she's actually coming out and saying, well, I actually don't feel that personal animosity towards him.
But she can't forgive Jonathan Ross.
No, because she said he never apologised to her. He never made any amends. He apologised to her grandfather and wrote him a letter, but she was just ignored. And there are a lot of people who did dismiss her and sort of said, well, she deserved it.
Yeah.
But we're different now.
interesting.
We take a different attitude now, I think.
Yeah,
We're going to hear from so many different people, aren't we? About Russell Brand, and he was a good guy, he was an awful guy.
I do find I'm quite uncomfortable with it in a way because it is trial by me. If this was a criminal case ongoing, then fine, it's evidence being given and that's fine. But we're not at that stage.
Yeah, and there is a sort of broader sort of trashing of his character, I guess, by tying it to, you know, it was a shocking scandal at the time, but it was seen as a scandal. It wasn't illegal.
No.
It was, you know, sort of the humour of the age. I think there is something... one thing I've found strange is the way that period of time has now become the bad old days.
Yeah.
Like, the bad old days used to be the 1970s, when we're talking about the Jimmy Savile scandal. Now we talk about the nasty noughties, as if everything that happened in that time was lewd and, you know, vicious, and Russell Brand was just typical, you know, of that era. I think that's, you know, pretty inaccurate.
Well, I have to say, I mean, I am no fan of Russell Brand as a performer, comedian, actor, anything else. I mean, it's not...
Everyone seems to be saying that, but there must be some people out there who really enjoy his humour.
There must be, but it's, you know, never was my cup of tea at all. And yet, you know, you've got to follow the justice system in this country, and that's what we're not doing.
And it can't just be based on your personal assessment.
No.
Very unpleasant people are also entitled to things like the presumption of innocence. And I was going to say, there was a piece in Spiked magazine, an interview with Harvey Procter, who was at the centre of the whole Operation Midland investigation, and he's really held the line on presumption of innocence, even with the Hugh Edwards story as well. And he has said, you know, these people, we shouldn't just immediately rush to judgment.
No.
And he is someone who knows what it's like to have the whole society turn against you and how hard that is.
Well, look, I'll tell you what, this is all very heavy stuff, so I want to lighten things up a little bit. Because, and this, I'm getting very excited about this. This is definitely lighter. This is mind-blowing. NASA's OSIRIS-REx capsule will return to Earth today, and it's going to drop down its package, which is a very important package, in the Utah desert, ending a 7-year mission.
Yes, this is very exciting, actually. It has precious cargo on board, a handful of dust grabbed for an asteroid, Bennu. So, this is very exciting indeed. Who are we talking to?
We're talking to the spaceman who we know and love, planetary scientist Andy Lound, who joins us this morning. Andy, really good to see you. What is this going to tell us? What light could be shed on the beginning of humankind, of life on Earth?
Good morning, both. Yeah, this is very exciting because this particular asteroid, Bennu, which was only discovered in about 1999, is a very, very old object indeed. So this is one of the asteroids, which actually dates back to the very beginnings of the solar system. We know that by analysing it. It's a very dark object, which makes it very exciting. It's likely to contain a great deal of carbon-based material, carbon on it, making it a carbonaceous asteroid, a B class, which is one of the very rare types. Its orbit is interesting as well, because its orbit actually comes relatively close to the Earth. It hasn't settled down like the other asteroids in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Means that it flies past the Earth and slowly adjusts its orbit every so often. But its surface, therefore, is very old, very pristine. And they sent a spacecraft there to OSIRIS-REx to take a sample and learn something about it, which in itself was quite surprising, because it got this arm on it which was supposed to have dropped onto the surface. Instead of slamming onto the surface and sucking up material, it didn't. It actually sank into the surface a bit. So that means the surface was very rubbly, very old surface with loads of rubble on it, and it managed to pull some of this material, suck some of this material out. About 60 grams of material. It might seem very small, but that's actually quite a lot of material to take back and bring that back to the Earth. And this kind of material is carbonaceous material, which is really, really important to us. And it can give us an analysis of what the early building blocks were, probably of the planets themselves. Because the planets, when they started to form, were bombarded with all this debris and material from asteroids like Bennu, because the orbit of Bennu is actually like one of those very early objects. And they would crash into the Earth and seed material. Now, and I like to bring things to show you. So we actually have here, just check you can see it. This is a carbonaceous chondrite meteorite sample. This is over 1.2 million years old, and this was actually found in Canada. And it's very dusty indeed. I can scrape my hand on it, and there's carbon material comes off this. Now, the problem with this, although we can analyse it, is in fact it's been contaminated with the Earth. And the material we will get from Bennu, sealed in its container, which is returning today, will not be contaminated by Earth. So it'll be the pristine material, the pristine carbon material that may have originally seeded the building blocks of life itself.
Can I ask then, why is it? Because there's often this talk that life came from these building blocks from asteroids crashing into the planet. Well, if those building blocks were created somewhere else and it became asteroids and all the rest of it, why would they not have just appeared on Earth as Earth was being formed?
Well, the material has to get to Earth at some shape or form, and that's the whole point. A planet doesn't evolve in isolation. Although it sort of starts to come together. The Earth, we believe, built up by material crashing into it and building those layers up. So the major pieces themselves had to arrive from us. It just doesn't spontaneously appear. So the original solar system is we had the sun, we had dust and gas surrounding the sun. This material started to coalesce together and started to form little clumps and blocks. And we've actually seen this being formed partly in the rings of Saturn, which shows that process works. And we've actually seen it going around other stars now, thanks to things like the Hubble and the Webb telescope showing us this. And this clumping of material started to build an object up. But of course, there was that much around. Other material then started to smash into it. And the building blocks of life itself, the carbon, which some of it would have originated in the solar system to a certain degree from the cloud material, but some of it would have been brought in by stars exploding elsewhere, because all the heavy building blocks of life and the building blocks that we understand was formed at the center of stars, which then exploded, distributed that material. That material came into our solar system. Some of that material landed on the asteroids, landed on other objects, coalesced into icy bodies, such as the comets. Those bodies then crashed into the primitive Earth and distributed the material there. So it's a distribution system, if you like, of building blocks.
And you know I love it, Andy. You know I love it. Terrific to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it. I mean, that it just excites me beyond belief, because it's such a mind-bending thought.
It is.
To do the same to you, Candice?
Yes, I mean, how does life come from non-life?
Yeah.
And I think they've done a lot of experiments showing that it can happen, but hearing Andy explain it in that way, and I mean, whenever I listen to him, I just think I've learned so much.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
He breaks it down into digestible bits, doesn't it?
Yes, there is so much going on that we don't know, and I love these advancements now that we're getting in physics in particular, and the exploration of outer space, and also, you know, people are starting to wonder, you know, was what happened in our particular solar system unique, or could it have been replicated all over the universe?
Yeah.
And even just the fact of, you know, being able to collect these samples is just amazing.
Oh,
you know,
it's phenomenal.
space travel just restores your faith in humanity like nothing else, because we live in such pessimistic times.
Totally.
But you think of the amazing things that human beings are doing, and you just feel so inspired.
It's been on a journey of 1.2 billion miles.
Yeah, it's taken 7 years.
It's your daily commute, isn't it?
It's
That's quite incredible.
It is for stuff like that. It's just mind-blowing when you actually... If you even think about simple things like infinity...
And beyond.
Infinity, eternity, all things like that. You just start to freak out. It's just absolutely... What these scientists get their heads around is phenomenal.
Also, the effort just to get this little small piece.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
Absolutely mind-blowing. Candice, Mail on Sunday. What's this about Downton Abbey and a wedding? And
So it's unusual for me. I wouldn't normally pick a celebrity story.
Right.
But actually what I was interested in about this is that Michelle Dockery has remarried, because she was widowed at a very young age.
Oh.
Her husband died tragically when he was about 35 years old. And she's managed to find love again. And I just think that's amazing, because I have known people who've been widowed at very young ages and they're not expecting it. It's hard to lose your partner at any age, but to find love again is amazing, because the grief you experience it can almost become a block to forming a new relationship and finding that happiness. And it's something that no one of that age ever expects, that they will lose someone so young. So when I saw it, I felt really happy for her, because I remember when I first read it, I just thought, that is so sad, such a young woman to lose the love of her life.
That's a lovely story. Should we go to something very different?
Yes.
Fraser, pushing their buttons, Texas drivers are left furious. Why? Can we go to that? Do we have a clip for this?
Yeah, we do.
Poor old Austin, Texas, they've had self-driving cars unleashed onto the roads, and there's an amazing video of just this long traffic jam of all of these self-driving autonomous cars just unable to move.
Oh, here we go.
So this is them all... Well, it just looks like a standard traffic jam, doesn't it? But they've caused it themselves.
It goes on forever, and it seems to be, because the cars don't know how to deal with each other or how to deal with the road. They're just, standing still. I think one of the interesting things about these cars is that they actually, they're just, the technology is just not there yet, unfortunately. But they've been unleashed onto the world anyway.
Can you not take them over manually? You'd think you could.
Well, I think they're run by like not Uber, but one of these sort of car-sharing companies. So I don't think the people in there are allowed to sort of take over. Yeah. But one thing that people don't really think about is that actually, when pedestrians get on the road, that seems to be a big problem. When things are busy, but because actually. You need to actually drive your car at pedestrians to get rid of them sometimes when they're sort of spilling over. And an autonomous car is programmed not to do that, because it would be unsafe.
Yeah, I think I'd rephrase that slightly differently.
If you have...
But I know what you mean. If people are crossing the road and the cars just stop, they will just continue to cross.
Not necessarily crossing the road, but if they're spilling out onto the road, it's usually, you need to actually... Sometimes you need to be a bit aggressive.
I'm not sure I trust the tech yet.
No, on that note, we need to take a break before you landed in a whole load of trouble. Thank you both. See you later on. Let's go check on the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, today, very different day to yesterday. Spells of heavy rain, especially across the northern half of the UK. Best of any brightness, really, across the south. So as we start the day, got this area of rain across parts of Wales and the Midlands. This will gradually spread its way northwards as we go through the course of the morning, turning quite heavy at times, and then this rain will then transfer into Northern Ireland and Scotland through the afternoon. A thoroughly wet afternoon to come here. But further south, actually, it starts to turn a bit drier and brighter. Increasing amounts of sunshine, especially down towards the southeast. Could see highs reaching 21 degrees here. Elsewhere, the temperature's tempered somewhat by the strength of the wind and also the rain. Into the evening, the rain potentially turning heavier still across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So watch out if you are travelling. There could be quite a lot of surface spray on the roads. And then through the course of the night, most of the rain will clear its way into the North Sea, leaving largely clear skies across parts of England and Wales, but further showers moving in across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So as we do start Monday, could just see some overnight rain just lingering across the southeast, but generally for a lot of England and Wales, actually it's going to be quite a pleasant day, plenty of sunshine, a few showers around, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, really a day of sunshine and blustery showers, with some of these showers potentially quite heavy and thundery. For most of us, temperatures generally around where they should be for the time of year, but in the south, in the sunshine, feeling quite warm.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
We were looking earlier on at the Republic movement and their invasion into Buckingham Palace for a picture, basically saying, not my king. Jason says, if you don't like our king or our monarchy, then move to a country with a republic. We're overpopulated, so do us a favour.
People just want to boot out anyone who disagrees with them.
Not a bad point. Get your thoughts coming through this morning.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 24th of September. Today, the Prime Minister planning to slash the most hated tax in Britain. As party conference season approaches, cutting inheritance tax is likely to be announced, apparently, by Rishi Sunak.
The Home Secretary questions whether international migration and refugee treaties are fit for purpose. Catherine Forster is in Dover. She'll be telling us more.
Yes, I'm here in Dover where 24,000 people have crossed the channel this year. That's down about 20% on last year, but still a very big number. Suella Braverman, Home Secretary, talking very tough on immigration again. I'll tell you exactly what she's been saying shortly.
The UK's biggest boat show ends this weekend, and Jeff Moody, our reporter, was there for you.
Yes, and Craig Snell will have your weather.
Good morning. Most of us saw some sunshine yesterday. Will that continue today? Find out more in a little bit.
And our Aidan's got the sport.
Yeah, coming up later on, we'll have news of wins in the Premier League for Manchester United and Manchester City, but despair for British heavyweight hopeful Joyce.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Emily Carver, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
So to the most important matters of the day. Tessa has emailed in. Morning, Tessa. Why has Stephen got a tiny letter A on his shirt near his tie? I haven't.
No.
We've been trying to work out in the break what you meant, Tessa. I have no idea. Unless it was a bit of a mic cable sticking out here.
I think it's the microphone.
Could be.
Or is there a little crease in your shirt?
Yeah, no, there's
You've got some
there.
flowers on your...
I've got some flowers on my... I was given this shirt for my 40th birthday.
Goodness me.
I know you're...
That's an old shirt. Sorry, I must stop. That's very rude.
Yeah, well, Claire says Steve is Steve. Oh, don't call me Steve. Oh, don't call me Steve. I hate it. Stephen is great for his age.
Just great in general?
Great. It also says, Emily, don't change your smile.
You don't like reading that out, do you?
I do like that.
Oh, that's nice.
Cara says, please tell Emily not to stop smiling. It's a delightful trait. It
That's really
you
nice.
Smile too. Well, actually, I do think to be criticised for smiling, there's not enough smiling in the world.
It's better than having a resting, grumpy face.
Yes, it is. It is. And on the inheritance tax... Oh, is that ready? Oh, go on, then. It was talking about how old I am. Here's a shot, then. There you go. That's when I was known as Steve. That's from my Channel 5 days. That's 1997. If you're listening on the radio, you're not missing much. It's just me looking younger and thinner and all the rest of it. Though our director did say to me when he saw that, oh, you've grown into your looks, Stephen.
Better looking now, Stephen.
Honestly, you look at that, though, and you just think, blooming heck, I was a child.
Men do often improve with age, don't they?
They do. Well, I've always wanted grey hair. What can you do? Here's an interesting on the tax issue. Nigel saying we should abolish income tax completely and raise VAT to 40%, which sounds... But he says you get to keep all you earn and spend if you want to.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea. Would it raise enough money, though? You'd have to do all the modelling, wouldn't you, to see if it would raise enough money to keep us going. But it might do.
Well, we could always try it. We need some radical thinking in this country, don't you?
But I like that. I would never have thought of that. Wouldn't have occurred to me in a million years.
I wonder if he's thought about it before, or if it was just, a thought that came this morning.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway...
Might have a whole proposal.
Interesting point. Perhaps you should put that to the Prime Minister, Nigel, because when it comes to tax, Rishi Sunak is reportedly considering cutting inheritance tax. And it is a move, no surprise, to win over more voters ahead of the next election.
Yes, the plans will likely make way for the eventual scrapping of this most hated tax in Britain, though Downing Street has been playing down some of the speculation.
Well, there's lots to talk to our political correspondent Catherine Forster about this morning. She joins us live from Dover. Let's start with this one, Catherine. I mean, it is a lot of people have called for it for a long time, but nothing ever has really much happened. Is it looking likely that we may get this announcement this week?
I think it is looking very likely that the government are going to move in inheritance tax. simply because they think there are potentially a lot of votes in this. There's plenty of people, especially in the blue wall down south, who may be a bit fed up with the government, maybe think they're not conservative enough, and have a lot of money in their houses, who might at the next election flirt with not voting or voting for the Lib Dems, and the government are pretty confident that a cut and the promise of the abolition of inheritance tax might bring a lot of voters their way. Now, I think it's worth saying there's less than 4% of deaths actually result in an inheritance tax charge, so it's not paid by that many people. But according to a YouGov survey, nearly a third of people believe that it could affect them. So clearly, also, it doesn't raise the Treasury that much money. So the tax burden is at a 70-year high. Jeremy Hunt is saying no tax cuts in the autumn statement. But what seems likely is that in the March budget, a cut to the threshold, which is currently 40%, is likely to be announced. And then the Conservative Party are likely to make it a manifesto promise that if they get back into power, they will ultimately abolish inheritance tax completely.
Catherine, have we heard anything from the opposition? Presumably this will provide some ammunition for those who want to say the Tories only care about the wealthy.
Well, yes, it will feed into that. I think it's a very easy target for Labour to say, look at them, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. The government is potentially not going to uprate benefits in line with inflation. And here they are supporting the very wealthiest. So let's see what the attack lines are, but I suspect they will be along those lines.
Yeah, Catherine, what are you doing in Dover?
Well, I'm here for the People's Panel on Camilla Tominey's show. We're going to be talking to the locals about the issues that matter to them. But, of course, illegal migration across the Channel, the huge issue here in Dover. There's 24,000 people have crossed the Channel illegally this year. Rishi Sunak has pledged to stop the boats, not having much luck. But Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, is heading to the States. She's going to be making a big speech on Tuesday, and she's basically saying, are the international frameworks and conventions that we have that were made over 50 years ago fit for purpose in an age of planes and smartphones? We know that she personally would really like the UK to pull out of the European Convention on Human Rights. She sees that as an obstacle because, of course, still no one has been sent to Rwanda. But she's saying that, you know, countries need to work together because these are real challenges, which indeed they are. And in Europe, we see migrants. It's becoming a real issue yet again. So a lot of shared challenges. So we'll hear much more about this next week.
Yeah, we'll hear what your People's Panel have to say about it today. Catherine, thanks very much indeed. Now, it's been a year since 29-year-old Rebecca Gannon died in a diving accident in Albania, but her family say they're still waiting for justice.
Yes, they've raised concerns with police about the company that organised the trip, believing she was given faulty equipment.
But despite this, Becky's father, George, says he's been met with silence by Albanian authorities, and he joins us in the studio. I was going to say it's good to see you. It's not, frankly, because you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be in this position. Tell us what you believe happened.
Well, I believe she was killed by the company that took her diving. I spent 10 months in Albania searching for justice with all the authorities. Got nowhere. The prosecution in Albania, no information whatsoever. I've had the coroner from Staffordshire Police using me in Albania because they've had no information whatsoever after a year, because it was a year last Tuesday. And as far as I'm aware, speaking to the chief of police in Albania, he was then transferred to a different city because he was corresponding with me. There was no oxygen in the tank. The jacket you put on that you press to inflate didn't work. and then they put the weights, because she was only a little girl, and she went straight to the bottom.
Oh. I can't imagine the toll that must be taking on you and your family.
Well, we haven't been able to grieve yet.
No. No. So what was it like, actually, when you went to Albania and you say you tried to get through to the authorities, trying to find answers, trying to get them to take this seriously, and you were just met with...
With a brick wall.
With nothing?
Nothing whatsoever. I spent every day in the Chief of Police port, and then there was a bar across the road from there, so I spent all day outside there waiting for him to come out. But nothing whatsoever. And then I went to the prosecution's office more than 24 times, and I was met with armed guards that wouldn't let me in to speak to this prosecution. And then I've recently found out why it's taken so long up to now is because there's only one professional scuba diving expert in Albania, and they can't find him.
Look, I mean, to put it into context, this wasn't her first diving trip, was it?
Oh, no. She's dived all around the world.
So she's someone who really knew what she was doing?
Absolutely. She was a PADI expert diver. She's dived in New Zealand, Australia, South America, England, many places. And the ironic thing about this was that she dived in... It was only 7 metres deep, this water was. There was a wreck at the bottom, a Second World War wreck down there, 7 metres deep, 30% visibility only. The day before, there was only 30% visibility, so the dive was cancelled. So all the people that was on the day before joined this dive, which overloaded the actual experience, and with the same 30% visibility. And
it just doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
Doesn't make any sense whatsoever, no.
What can the UK authorities do, or what have they been doing?
They haven't done anything. Nothing whatsoever. No contact whatsoever. The only people that have contacted me are, like I say, the Coroner's Office for the Staffordshire Police, and they've only contacted me for me to get information out of the Albanian, which is... I've not been able to do so. It's been impossible.
So what are your hopes, then? You'll come in to talk to us on this channel to raise some awareness.
That's right.
And you want the UK government to get involved,
absolutely,
the UK police services?
Well, I've been out there for nearly on a year with no support, no help whatsoever. Nothing whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, that just isn't right. You need answers. Even with respect, is it fair to say even if you got answers you didn't want, or the answers that you wouldn't necessarily agree with, at least there's some...
That's right.
Something.
We just need something. Just something. I mean, I haven't even got a single piece of paper to say Becky's died. Not a single piece of paper.
No death certificate or anything?
No, nothing whatsoever from Albania. They sent the death certificate and they put the wrong date on it. So that had to go back, and it's not come back yet.
And as you say, I mean, to be in a position where you've not been able to grieve for your daughter a year after her passing, is horrific. I can't imagine how you're getting up every morning.
I mean, I'm on a mission. My mission is to get justice for my daughter. And once I've achieved everything I need to achieve, then I'll be able to grieve. And I'm just trying to stay strong, you know.
Well, look, George, we wish you all the best in getting those answers, because clearly there are a lot of very big questions here which do need to be answered. Thank you very much indeed, and hopefully we've been able to shed a little bit of light on it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming in. Oh, devastating story.
It's just
really
horrific,
sorry
isn't
to
it?
hear
And
that.
it's, I mean, for someone like George, I mean, to go through that and then not have any answers, I mean, you've got to know what has gone on.
I can't imagine. Let's hope we can hold some of the Albanian authorities to account.
And if you're part of the UK authorities, it's time to get involved in that one. It is 8:14. Let's have a look at some of the other stories heading our way this morning. And President Biden has rebuked what he called extreme Republicans, saying the party's lawmakers needed to take immediate steps to prevent a government shutdown. That's ahead of...
Let's be clear. If the government shuts down, that means members of Congress, members of the U.S. military are going to have to continue to work and not get paid. A government shutdown could impact everything from food safety to cancer research to Head Start programs for children. Funding the government is one of those basic responsibilities of Congress. And it's time for Republicans to start doing the job America elected them to do.
The Home Secretary is expected to raise the unsustainable pressures created by illegal migration when she makes a 3-day visit to the US this week. In a keynote speech, Suella Braverman will present a blueprint for how countries can combat the crisis and highlight how Britain has led the way in bringing forward innovative approaches. However, despite the Prime Minister saying stopping the boats is his priority, the UK government's policies have so far failed.
And the SNP has said Sir Keir Starmer cannot credibly offer change unless he backs their calls for a cost of living support package. Stephen Flynn, the SNP Westminster leader, has written to Mr Starmer, urging him to drop what he calls limp loyalty to Tory austerity. So I'm just... after that last interview, it's just horrific. It just shakes you to the core. And I'll tell you partly what it is, and you may be watching or listening and thinking, yes, this is an awful situation, how dreadful, which it is. But it's when you have the privilege of meeting people in the flesh and you see their face and their eyes and they're slightly shaking hands and all the rest of it, and that's when you see the reality of what they're going through.
Yeah, I'm actually quite affected by that. Imagine your daughter going off for a diving trip. She's done it so many times and then never seeing her again. It really is devastating. I hope he gets some answers. I don't know what the chances are of that, but us having him on hopefully will help in some way.
Let's hope so. With tax, loads of you getting in touch on tax, quite rightly so, this morning. Jeffrey says inheritance tax is a tax on the younger generation. I worked for 50 years, paid my taxes, and my children will have to pay again.
Well, that's true, yes. Obviously, you don't pay the tax because you've passed away, but your family, loved ones do. And they have to go through, we mentioned this earlier, all the rigmarole when you've just lost someone.
So, yeah.
To go through all the, well, presumably paperwork, contacting revenue and customs.
Yeah, Graham says it doesn't matter if inheritance tax only affects richer people. If it's not fair, it should be scrapped. But he doesn't think it's the most hated tax. He thinks the most hated tax is a tax on pensions.
Someone else wrote that council tax is their most hated tax.
Yeah, I don't think I can agree with the council. I don't like the council tax. I don't like the way it's going up, but it's one of those things. David says about pensions again. What about tax on pensions? You're taxed on income when working and then taxed on your pensions. Surely this is double taxation.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, except you do get some pension tax relief.
Well, why is it taxed at all? It's not really income. Well, I guess it...
if the idea is that you get pension tax relief, so any money you put into your pension you don't pay tax on,
yeah, okay.
then you pay tax when you get it out the other end.
So it actually hasn't been taxed, technically?
No, but I'm not quite sure what pension tax relief is. I mean, there is some pension tax relief, but whether it's complete and absolute, I don't know.
And then, obviously, your employer contributes too. Maybe let us know what your least favourite tax is, if it's not inheritance tax.
It could be a very long list, couldn't it? It could be a very long list.
Scrap the lot.
There'll be a window tax next and a weather tax. Let's see what's happening today. Here's Craig.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, today, very different day to yesterday. Spells of heavy rain, especially across the northern half of the UK. Best of any brightness, really, across the south. So as we start the day, got this area of rain across parts of Wales and the Midlands. This will gradually spread its way northwards as we go through the course of the morning, turning quite heavy at times, and then this rain will then transfer into Northern Ireland and Scotland through the afternoon. A thoroughly wet afternoon to come here. But further south, actually, it starts to turn a bit drier and brighter. Increasing amounts of sunshine, especially down towards the southeast. Could see highs reaching 21 degrees here. Elsewhere, the temperature's tempered somewhat by the strength of the wind and also the rain. Into the evening, the rain potentially turning heavier still across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So watch out if you are travelling. There could be quite a lot of surface spray on the roads. And then through the course of the night, most of the rain will clear its way into the North Sea, leaving largely clear skies across parts of England and Wales, but further showers moving in across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So as we do start Monday, could just see some overnight rain just lingering across the southeast. But generally, for a lot of England and Wales, actually, it's going to be quite a pleasant day. Plenty of sunshine, a few showers around. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, really, a day of sunshine and blustery showers, with some of these showers potentially quite heavy and thundery. For most of us, temperatures generally around where they should be for the time of year. But in the south, in the sunshine, feeling quite warm.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, this is Breakfast on GB News on your TV, on GB News Radio, on DAB Plus and online. No, we've got to get it out there.
Everywhere.
Do not forget. You
On
see,
X, on TikTok, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube. Yes, you said that.
Yeah, we're everywhere. We are
everywhere.
But it means that if you are heading out, you can pop us on in the car or on your wireless or whatever you like. Anyway, we've got all the sport heading your way with Aidan in just a moment. TikTok. What is this?
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
OK, at 8:24, Aidan McGee is here. Good morning, bringing joyous news for Man United fans.
Well, yeah, I mean, we touched on it yesterday. They've had a litany of problems in the last few weeks, both on and off the field. They've had injuries to key players, key signings. You know, at the start of the season, you want to introduce your new players. They've not really been able to do that to the extent to which they would have wanted to. They've had recent problems, of course, with Mason Greenwood and everything that happened there, and Anthony. Those charges have been dropped as well, but still a lot for the manager to deal with. Then there's the ownership problems. Do the Glazers actually want to sell this thing? They put it up for sale last November, and now still no closer to selling it. In fact, there's a lot of rumours on around Fleet Street and elsewhere in business community saying they actually want to keep it and never wanted to sell it in the first place. They just want to see roughly what it was worth. So they go to Burnley yesterday. Tricky match there, evening kick-off at Turf Moor. Newly promoted side, Burnley, but they win the game with a fantastic volley by Bruno Fernandes, and a welcome bit of respite for them, because they. But having said that, Stephen, we're early in the season and only up to eighth in the table, a considerable distance off the front runners, Man City. They're great rivals, of course, who won yesterday with 10 men. So still plenty to do, but as I say, having lost 3 games in a row and beaten soundly at home by Brighton last week. They lost to Arsenal the week before. They lost on Tuesday night in Germany against Bayern Munich, 4-3, but it wasn't a 4-3 game. They were comfortably beaten by the German champions. So, as I say, tough assignment. They're not going to make a season with that result yesterday, but just some respite, some welcome respite at the end of a very tough few weeks.
And Man City are top at the moment.
Yeah, Man City have gone up to top. They've won 5 games in a row. Again, they looked unassailable in the first 15 minutes yesterday. 2 goals up against Nottingham Forest, who are one of the weaker teams in the league, but they've made progress in the last few months or so. But they got a man sent off, a guy called Rodri, the midfielder, and Pep Guardiola not happy with him at all. He lost his temper. It's very rare that Manchester City players lose their temper. They don't have to because they're so good. They're in front. Another goal for Erling Haaland. So that leaves them top of the league. And then this afternoon we've got the North London derby, Tottenham against Arsenal. My prediction of yesterday, 2-1 to Arsenal, because it's at the Emirates, still stands. So you can hold me to that next week. I'll tell you what, actually don't hold me to it. Don't hold me to it. I'll remind you if I got it right.
Forget about it. Yeah, forget about it if you get it wrong. Fair point. Joe Joyce. Is his career over now?
Not officially, but look, you win, you lose two fights soundly against. In fact, last night was even worse than the first one against a 40-year-old Chinese boxer. Then I think it's lights out there. I mean, look, he didn't move his head enough. He's a sitting target for someone experienced and someone wily and canny like Zhang. And I think they can kiss goodbye now to his shot at Tyson Fury or Alexander Usyk. I think Zhang is going to take that position now, that mandatory position. In fact, at the end of the fight, he called out Tyson Fury. He said to the fans at Wembley, "Does anyone want me to shut Tyson Fury up?"
Goodness me.
Rather him than me, for once and for all. But look, he's awkward. He's a southpaw. Joe Joyce couldn't live with him. That's the reality of it, and he's not as good as we thought he was going to be.
OK.
A career in tatters, maybe.
Yeah, in tatters. Yeah, not officially ended. They do come back these days, but when you lose 2 fights in a row in the space of 5 months, he put on 2 stone as well. And it didn't work. The bulk didn't work.
No, blimey neck. Losing 2 stone. Never mind putting it on.
He's got to lose it now.
You get it.
He has got to lose it now. Aidan, thanks very much.
Good to see you guys.
Indeed. Coming up, we've got our headline makers. Lots of great stuff to talk about, including XL bullies and a protest involving their owners. We'll tell you more in a moment.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 8:32. Good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Emily.
Yes, it's time now for Headline Makers. Joining us to go through some of the headlines is Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers, and writer and commentator Candice Holsworth. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So, should we go to the bully dog story?
Yes, that's XL bullies in the Sun on Sunday, Fraser.
So there have been people protesting against the ban on XL bullies, lots of unhappy dog owners. But it's interesting that just the day before the march, a dog believed to be an XL bully actually bit someone. So, it's pretty clear that these dogs are dangerous. I think even the organisers, unwittingly admitted this because they told people, please do not bring your dogs to the march, because can you imagine having all these, XL bully fighter dogs all in one place? It was billed as a family march as well, with lots of children. And we shouldn't laugh, but it's, it would have been a disaster waiting to happen.
Well, to be fair, any breed, if you had all those dogs together, it would be...
Oh, come on.
chaos.
No one would say don't bring your cockapoo to the cockapoo convention.
No, I suppose.
I mean...
One funny thing was that actually there was a bit of crossover between... We were talking earlier about the Remain March.
Oh, yeah.
Or the Rejoin March, and there was a bit of a crossover, and, one of the very angry Bully XL owners started calling them traitors and started swearing at them. So there's a bit of a cultural clash there. And I don't know if people remember, there was actually a pro-Remain march a couple of years ago, built specifically around dogs. Like they called it the wooferendum. People saying
really?
Bark if you hate Brexit type thing. And those were a very different kind of dog. They were, the sort of more Labrador type, nicer, calmer dog altogether.
Yeah, well, yeah. Look, I don't know what to think about this. In a way, I don't know enough about dogs to work out if there are actually specifically nasty breeds, or if some of those owners can be quite right and say, well, I've got an XL bully and it's just a lovely dog.
I'm sure most of the owners are just, decent people, but it's clear that I think it's 70% of the, dog killings are down to this one breed. Now, I don't know what necessarily that this ban will work because, there are different... It's very difficult to classify breeds and certain dogs and, the Dangerous Dogs Act under which the ban is coming in is, famously an awful and useless piece of legislation precisely because it's so difficult to, determine breeds.
I'll tell you what, and I've said this before on this show, I don't know why. Forget the Dangerous Dogs Act and banning them and all the rest of it in that form of legislation. Bring back a dog licence.
Oh, yes.
And I know it was controversial and it was people cheered when it was scrapped. All the rest of it. Bring back a dog licence.
Yes, I mean, it's so irresponsible, and these are living creatures. I mean, I've had a dog now for about 8 years, and so I've done loads of walks with her in the park. And you see some incredibly awful dog owners. I mean, screaming and shouting at the dog. I saw one slap the dog once for nothing. And you just think, that dog can't advocate for itself. It can't do anything. It's just stuck with that guy.
It's a bit like sometimes parents with naughty children. They don't want to accept that their child is maybe the problem, and this happens with dog owners. You have, owners kicking off at each other because one dog's gone after their dog. There's been a bit of a fight. Who's to blame?
The owners are so loyal.
It can kick off in the park near me. It can.
Oh dear. Let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph, Candice. 2 in 5 staff are working full-time in the office.
Yeah.
2 in 5?
So is
that it?
So this is fascinating. So this is basically about how the different generations are dealing with working from home. So there are these stats. They're saying that 2 in 5 are working full-time, so many are just doing partly at home and then coming to the office a couple of days a week. But younger staff are saying that this is affecting them because they feel like they're not getting the skills that older people had when they were working more full-time. And I feel like many people my age, many millennials, working from home really works for them because they've got little kids, they can sort of balance it. But you forget that people who are just entering the workforce in their 20s, that's the time in their life where they want to be in the office a lot, to meet people, to progress, to learn things. And I wonder how we're going to work that out so it works for everybody in the same way.
Also, it's how you meet a boyfriend or a girlfriend sometimes. Used to be a lot of the time. Yeah, well, that was how you met your future partner.
Well, it worked for you.
Everyone's just... We met on a Zoom. That's a story for another day. But yes, it's probably a bit miserable, actually, just to be in your bedroom all day in a shared flat.
Yeah, and, there's always talk about sort of loneliness epidemic, and it's not really a great surprise why, if people are sort of continuing the lockdown lifestyle of working from home. I think people do need to be in the office, as Candice says, it's picking up shared skills. So much, actually, work gets done in... I guess, spontaneous conversations that you can't really have if you have to email someone and arrange a meeting, or even if you have to just, WhatsApp someone or Slack. You do want to just bump into people sometimes and have...
you do, but even apart from that, from the younger generation perspective, I do think... you need to learn. They call it socialisation. You need to learn how to behave in an office. You need to learn how to have a job and how to turn up to work on time and work with people you don't like and all. And if young people are never learning that now, then what are they going to be like in 20 years' time?
Yeah, and if their experience is working from their bed, essentially, as a lot of people do
There's
now.
too much blurring as well between non-working life and working life, and it's almost this avoidant style of working. I want to do it from a distance.
It's a recipe for passive aggression between bosses and employees. Lots of instant messaging. Where's this? Where's that? Well, you need to sometimes have a bit of a confrontation. Or actually a conversation. I think a lot of young people don't like picking up the phone either.
No, that's true. But we did speak to someone over the weekend advocating working from home, and she was a clinical psychologist. It's perfectly possible for her to do that. But she's saying people like to do it because, like me, you can exercise. Like, you just take a break and then go to the gym or whatever for a couple of hours. I'm someone who needs the routine. I'd be useless. I need to say, well, this is when I need to be in the office, and this is when I can leave the office, and then after that I can do what I like.
Yeah, the separation.
Total separation.
That's what some people said to me during the lockdown. They've said, it's weird. I actually find that I like having that commute in the morning, and then that sets me up for the day, and then I come home, and the two things are different. They're not mixing with each other.
Oh, my God, during the pandemic, I thought that if I didn't reply to a message or an email on my phone, my boss would think I was slacking. and not doing anything. But because you just were always available.
Yeah, well, maybe you were slacking on a boat.
On a luxury yacht?
Yes, a luxury. Should we have a look at this? Because it's quite nice. We can all dream, perhaps, of swanning about on a luxury yacht. I'd probably get seasick, to be fair, but it's still a nice thought, isn't it? But the UK's biggest boat show is drawing to a close this weekend.
Yeah, shall we have a look? Jeff Moody has the story, I believe.
It's been going 54 years now, and despite some heavy downpours, nothing is dampening people's spirits. Leslie Robinson, who organises the event, says this year is the best one yet.
We've got a load of things that people come and do because this is a show. We want people to come down and have a great day out. Lots of things for kids, lots of people, even if you're not interested in boating, there is so much to do here. And actually, just coming onto this purpose-built, we build this marina every year. We've got 350 boats on here, about another 300 on land as well, 640 exhibitors selling all sorts of things. So it is an absolute fabulous opportunity to come down. You can hop on the boats. What I love about Southampton is it's so friendly. People want you to come onto the boats, to ask questions, come and look at all the things that we have got up there in terms of services and products and the big tents as well. It really is a really fun day out for the family.
It's a chance not just to look at the boats. Alex Wright from Rockley Water Sports will take you out on the water too.
So here at the show we have a sailing experience and a paddle sports experience as well. Anything from paddle boards, we've got a single one, we've got a double kayaks, and we've also got a 12-person paddle board as well. And then we've also got sailing dinghies, we've got catamarans, double-handers and single-handed dinghies as well.
And of course, if you're feeling flush, you could even buy a yacht. This is the Sunseeker 100. It's the largest yacht in the whole show. It's a little bit pricey, £9 million. We've also got to factor in the VAT. And people are still buying. Mark Chinnery is the sales manager for Sunseeker International. He says he's still shifting luxury yachts despite the cost of living crisis.
There certainly seems to be an air of caution because, marine finance was very popular many years ago. And I think what we've seen over the last few months is that there's a bit more hesitancy with actually making that commitment. But, it's a luxury product, a luxury sector, and we're very fortunate that we still have a lot of clients that do want to enjoy the lifestyle that boating gives.
And as 100,000 visitors have discovered, you can enjoy that lifestyle without spending a fortune. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Right.
Well, there you go. I mean, I think that's quite nice. Although I'm no good on a boat, what we did do last year is we went on those, what do you call them?
Skidoo. Not a skidoo.
The pedalo. No, they're like motorbikes on water.
Jet ski. Not a skidoo. That's on the snow.
A motorbike on the water. And I tell you what, it was terrifying to begin with because you really bounce up and down. Blooming loved it though.
I can imagine the adrenaline rush.
Oh, it was great. I wasn't driving actually. I was clinging onto the back.
Oh gosh, yes.
But that was all right. It was in the Med. I mean, it was lovely and warm and gorgeous.
I was a bit scared of one because I once went on the back with my dad as a kid, and he decided to take a big turn, and I fell off the back.
Oh.
And got a bit sore. So now I'm not so keen.
Oh yeah, no, I enjoyed it.
Not that I have the opportunity that much.
Mind you, it was a few years ago now. It wasn't last year. It was a few years ago, and I enjoyed it so much. I agreed to marry him the same day.
Oh, well, that would be exciting.
So there you go.
Oh yes, like a nice strong man.
Love is in the air.
Fraser, the Prime Minister reckons he's going to take on Keir Starmer over net zero.
Yeah, I mean, the context obviously is that Rishi is massively, massively behind in the polls, behind Keir Starmer, but he's thinking that, the sort of mild differences that he's proposing in how to handle net zero could be a possible dividing line between Labour and the Tories. I mean, Labour has already come out to defend the previous ban on petrol cars coming in 2030. They say they restore that when, if they get into power. I think this is a good area for the Prime Minister to exploit, but I don't think he's gone anywhere near far enough. I think that a lot of people won't necessarily be grateful for him pushing back targets that haven't yet affected them yet. I think, people want to see... People are struggling with the cost of living right now. They're not necessarily thinking about 2030. So, there are basically, there are lots of green levies on electricity. There are all kinds of other areas that he could be looking at in terms of, you know...
Yeah, but that's the key, isn't it? It looks like he's doing something significant, but it doesn't cost him anything.
That's true, because and also he's not going to be prime minister by 2030 or 2035. No, you know, let's be
never
honest.
know.
It's not.
It puts on the other thing is that it puts pressure, and this is what I think is quite clever from Rishi Sunak. It puts pressure on Keir Starmer to actually start talking and setting out what he thinks. OK, so you wouldn't delay the ban on petrol and diesel cars. Explain why.
And I think it's a really positive thing, especially when it comes to, you know, kind of green issues, because there has been a cross-party consensus on this for, you know, at least the past 20 years. There hasn't been any difference between Labour and Tory. You know, everyone signed up to the Climate Change Act. I mean, net zero itself was passed without a vote, with about 90 minutes of debate in Parliament, even though it's probably the most significant government policy of our lifetime, possibly, you know, of the past few hundred years.
But it is important, isn't it? I mean, the problem is we get wound up by all the debate and the costs and all the rest of it. The idea of actually going net zero, not having a carbon footprint, but whether you believe carbon is causing global warming or not, it's still an important thing to do, isn't it?
Well, I just want to see clear dividing lines. I want to actually have a choice. From the perspective as a voter, at the next election, I want them to have distinct positions that I can compare against. And I think that it's good that Keir Starmer, he's being pressured into being a bit more consistent, because I think he's been a bit vague, a bit wishy-washy. I don't think he's really pinned himself down on anything. But if the Conservatives take strong positions and then he can take a strong position, I think that actually makes the political debate much better.
Yeah, well,
I want to see way more pluralism in our political debate.
But this is the basic problem, isn't it? Actually, they're fighting for the centre ground, because that's how you win an election. And so they're not that far apart.
Yeah, well, that's true, actually. And I think that with what Rishi Sunak is doing, it is only tweaks. But still, I do think it is important that you have pragmatic voices sort of checking what I think has been the domination of more apocalyptic voices. And I mean, you were saying, yes, it's very rational to want to tackle climate change and to find ways of doing it. But I do feel the people who've dominated that debate, they don't talk about things in terms of policy and in an optimistic way. And I have an issue with that.
No, it's all you've destroyed our future.
Yes.
Also, I'm so fed up of hearing Labour representatives and Lib Dem representatives talking about how they'll do all these net zero policies, they'll insulate millions of homes, they'll switch out everyone's boilers to heat pumps, all of this, and there's no costing, absolutely no costing. And, you know, Philip Hammond, he wrote a letter a few years ago saying it's going to cost £1 to £2 trillion. Haven't heard anything about the cost since.
No.
You need a bit of honesty about it, and then we can actually make a decision.
Well, that's right. The scale of the challenge has not really been talked about in politics, and Rishi was right to say, you know, there's been dishonesty about this. I mean, it does involve changing just about every area of our life and industry. It's an enormous undertaking. That's not necessarily an argument against it, but you want to hear that the practical challenges have actually been considered.
All right, well,
the other side of it is that, you know, it's often talked about we just will adopt new technologies. Actually, the Climate Change Committee, which, you know, looks at these things, say that 62% will have to come from personal and individual behaviour change. And so that is things like eating less meat, driving less, going on holiday less. It involves doing things less as well as just switching over to new technologies. That's a big political...
We have got some costings in the Sunday Times, Candice. Updating the grid to accommodate offshore winds, £54 billion just for the wiring.
Yes, well, this is Robert Colville, so he's written an opinion piece, always worth reading. He's brilliant. And he's saying that one of the big problems we have is, you know, we're focusing so much on electrification and net zero, but we aren't building extra grid capacity. I mean, these very, very practical considerations I mean, he was saying in the piece that many councils have signed up to the idea of climate emergency, that there is a climate emergency. They're not building charging points. And that is the big problem. I mean, that, you know, so much of it is dominated by rhetoric, but the actual practical, getting down to business stuff, which is building extra capacity or, for instance, costing, isn't happening. But I'm thinking that is starting to come into the debate a lot more now. I mean, people have been so critical of, like, Nick Clegg, for instance, who for years ago opposed building more nuclear power stations. If we had those, we would have that extra grid capacity. I mean, there are so many challenges.
I mean, the gas infrastructure, that will cost billions to change if we want to adapt it to other, you know.
Well, but that's the other issue. That's the other issue with this. I mean, when you go back to the cars, and it's all about, effectively, people are saying there's going to have to be electric vehicles, which obviously there's all the controversy over how the batteries are built and the amount of carbon used in producing the batteries. A lot of people are saying, well, hydrogen fuel cells are better.
Yes.
But that technology isn't sort of being allowed to grow in the same way. So it's just, there's not enough plurality in the thinking.
Yeah, we need to broaden it completely. I think that is happening. I think that's happening in a way that's never quite happened before. I think when people were challenged in this, with the challenges in this debate, were often dismissed as deniers. But I think that's happening less and less now. And there is this sort of rational opposition, which I think is good. It's important.
Yeah, the debate or the discussion has been very much happening at a sort of elite level. You know, there hasn't been much contestation, and the more we talk about it, the more sort of, you know, democracy is always a good thing, right? Because you sort of see the flaws in certain ideas and you come up with better ideas. I think, you know, that's why the debate needs to happen. Otherwise, we will just, you know, be going down this road seemingly and making some really, you know, dangerous mistakes.
I'm so sceptical. Well, not about everything, but about electric vehicles.
Are you? Why?
Just because the government seems so behind them, and they're listening to, you know, car manufacturers who obviously now have an interest to invest in electric vehicles because of all of these targets and everything. Right. What if there's a better option?
What, than electric?
Through? Yeah. And everyone's bought them, and we've upgraded our electricity system, and then actually, you know, there's something else that could be better that we can invest in.
Yeah, well, it is the hydrogen thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you just go, I mean, you can fill a hydrogen fuel. It takes about 5 minutes to fill a hydrogen fuel cell.
Should we be putting our eggs in one basket? You know, that's all I'm saying.
But that's the problem with government picking winners.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than letting, you know, market mechanisms. Market mechanisms which are highly efficient at doing that.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I'm not against electric vehicles at all. I'd quite like an electric vehicle. I just need the battery capacity to be better.
Yes.
But it's always been the argument, well, if you have an electric vehicle, well, the electricity's got to be generated somewhere, somehow, and at the minute it's through coal or gas.
Yes, yes, I mean, the whole discussion needs to become a lot more sophisticated rather than just finger-pointing at each other, climate change denier. No, we actually really need to talk about the practical implications of this and what it will mean for people's lives.
So we need to know how to interact, and Julie Birchill, Candice, says because of lockdown, we don't know how to interact with each other anymore.
Yeah, so she's making the arguments in the Mail on Sunday that the rise in shoplifting and what she's observed, it's not just, you know, that people, like many people say, it's the cost of living, but she thinks that people have forgotten how to behave. She's seen a rise in antisocial behaviour, and she might be wrong, she might be right, but I want to understand what is at the heart of this now. You know, is it organised gangs organising all this shoplifting, or is it ordinary people?
Yeah, well, and it's an important distinction actually, because it's either if it's shoplifting, it's ordinary people. The organised gangs, some of the videos you have, it's looting basically.
Yeah, and I think basically, you know, the message has been received from criminals. I think it is a lot of gangs, actually, that if you steal less than £200, then the police aren't interested in going after you. So that just sort of, it's been quasi-legalised, essentially, unfortunately, and so it has exploded over the past couple of years. And you can also tell that it's not, you know, the story... Often people will tell stories about, you know, the desperate parent stealing for their child, you know, because you see things like formula milk being stolen. But actually, that has value because it has resale value, it doesn't go off. So there's certain products like formula milk, like Calpol, which sounds like they should pull on the heartstrings, but really they are being, you know, sold elsewhere for a profit.
I mean, it's pretty depressing to see security tags on items like cheese, which you do sometimes now see in some supermarkets. Security tags on items that, you know, wouldn't have been at threat of being nicked. before. Or Lurpak. They had security tags on them in some Tesco's or Sainsbury's or whatever.
Well, they are very expensive.
They are very expensive. I think they've come down a bit, though.
Oh, right, well, there you go. I've gone back to margarine spread because it's cheaper. We've got to leave it there. It's been really good to see you both this morning. Candice, Fraser, thanks very much indeed. Let's see what the weather's going to do with Craig.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, today, very different day to yesterday. Spells of heavy rain, especially across the northern half of the UK. Best of any brightness, really, across the south. So as we start the day, got this area of rain across parts of Wales and the Midlands. This will gradually spread its way northwards as we go through the course of the morning, turning quite heavy at times, and then this rain will then transfer into Northern Ireland and Scotland through the afternoon. A thoroughly wet afternoon to come here. But further south, actually, it starts to turn a bit drier and brighter. Increasing amounts of sunshine, especially down towards the southeast. Could see highs reaching 21 degrees here. Elsewhere, the temperature's tempered somewhat by the strength of the wind and also the rain. Into the evening, the rain potentially turning heavier still across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So watch out if you are travelling. There could be quite a lot of surface spray on the roads. And then through the course of the night, most of the rain will clear its way into the North Sea, leaving largely clear skies across parts of England and Wales, but further showers moving in across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So as we do start Monday, could just see some overnight rain just lingering across the southeast, but generally for a lot of England and Wales, actually it's going to be quite a pleasant day, plenty of sunshine, a few showers around, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, really a day of sunshine and blustery showers, with some of these showers potentially quite heavy and thundery. For most of us, temperatures generally around where they should be for the time of year, but in the south, in the sunshine, feeling quite warm.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, inheritance tax has got you going this one, but also actually Brexit. I'd forgotten about this one because we were talking about Brexit. Mike says, I'm fuming after watching you talk about Brexit. Germany's in recession, but Germany does have 7 million patients waiting for hospital treatment? Aren't train fares a fraction of what it costs to travel in the UK? Aren't they more reliable? Meanwhile, in broken Britain, we continue to struggle to get a doctor's appointment, children suffering poverty. But there you go, and all these sort of things. But, you know, so it's a very anti-Brexit viewpoint, but that's good because you need all your thoughts coming through. And we'll get analysis from...
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Sunday, the 24th of September, and these are the stories we've been covering on Breakfast this morning. And as party conference season approaches and the general election inches closer, cutting inheritance tax is one of the crowd-pleasing moves being considered by Rishi Sunak.
Yes, and Russia slams Zelensky's 10-point peace plan, as well as proposals to revive the grain deal, as completely unrealistic, adding to the ever-growing diplomatic deadlock.
The former head of the COVID vaccine task force warns of a new unknown pandemic that could kill up to 50 million people. Dear me, is it scaremongering or is it realistic planning?
And the Home Secretary questions whether international migration and refugee treaties are fit for purpose as the row over the ECHR continues.
And on a lighter note, the UK's biggest boat show is ending this weekend. 100,000 people visiting Southampton for the Maritime Show.
And NASA's OSIRIS-REx capsule will return to Earth today and touch down in Utah's West Desert, ending its 7-year mission.
And Crime Watch presenter Jill Dando, who was gunned down, as you remember, outside her home in 1999, is the subject of Netflix's latest true crime series.
And, of course, Craig Snell will have your weather.
Good morning. Most of us saw some sunshine yesterday. Will that continue today? Find out more in a little bit.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Emily Carver, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, I often like to ask what you're going to be doing on the Sunday, how you're spending your day, going out for a nice walk, heading to church shortly, a nice Sunday roast or whatever. What are you doing, Emily?
I'm coming back.
Hey!
I am coming back. I'm going to take myself out for some breakfast, and then I am back for GB News Sunday, which I cannot miss, 1 till 3 o'clock. So stay tuned for that.
So you've been doing double shifts yesterday and today, because you were on the 5 last night.
I was, and I am back again, and I haven't had enough sleep. But I've had lots of coffee and I'm raring to go again. And it's been a pleasure with you anyway.
Don't tell lies.
It has. But yes, perhaps I need an early night tonight.
Yes, well, there you go. It's impressive stuff, I can tell you.
People will be sick of me.
Well, no, never. Never. I'll tell you what's always impressive. That's the figures we now getting on the Camilla Tominey show. 9:30 this morning, and that's because she covers all the stuff. I hate to say nice things about her because she's sat here. Morning to you.
We are doing well in the ratings, so thank you for pointing that out. Steve, thank you very much.
Very, very well.
We'll take it on the rivals. We've got another one. Yeah, it's a big one. It's a big weekend. Didn't you feel last week the starting gun was sounded on the general election, and now all of the Sunday papers are reflecting that. So we've got the Mail on Sunday, Rishi will not axe triple lock on pensions, and Ruth Sutherland inside says he's not going to do that because it would be politically suicidal. We've then got the Sunday Express talking about him taking taking the fight to Starmer, another story in the Mail on Sunday on that. We've got inheritance tax on the front of the Sunday Times that is going to scrap inheritance tax. As Catherine Forster pointed out earlier on your show in Dover, it doesn't affect that many people, but a third of all voters think it will affect them, which means that it's good politics. We've got more talk about HS2, the Manchester leg being scrapped, which I had to say was bad politics from Rishi Sunak, not least because he's going up to Manchester imminently for the Tory party conference. And I think the North is feeling left behind with all of this rail farrago.
It's very difficult to know what to do with it. I mean, we covered it a lot yesterday, but the idea that do you force it to continue, as Labour were telling us yesterday that they would do, they'd go ahead with it, they keep it all going, but it's going to cost an awful lot of money, or do you just actually pull the rug and go, this can't be done now?
Isn't it now just too far down the track, pardon the pun? I mean, also, it doesn't make any sense to me at all to not be prioritising the rail links to the north. I mean, there's a really interesting story in the Mail on Sunday saying it's now going to take longer because of this Old Oak Common farrago, which means that we can't take the HS2 from Euston, we've got to take it from near Acton in West London, that actually it's going to take longer to take the HS2 than it would a conventional train between London and Birmingham. Meanwhile, we've still got this problem with the lack of rail links between Manchester and Leeds, and then talk of this Manchester to the further north, Newcastle leg being scrapped. I mean, what the hell's going on? I think if I was a voter in the north, I would be feeling left behind.
I think we've got to cut our losses with it. It's not even going into Euston.
Somebody said the first loss is the best loss. The trouble is, if it was just the 35 billion that had initially been predicted for the project, that would be fine. But now it's 100 billion. So are we going to just say... And then, by the way, most of the Chilterns have been carved up. I mean, how would you be feeling if you're living in those areas? You've been... I mean, I do live near that area. I live on the Herts-Bucks border. All of these roads are full of congestion. You've got this massive HS2 hub on the M25 that is blinding people in the local area because the lights are so bright. I went to Denham the other day. You've got the line going basically like through this water ski centre. If you were these people, indeed, if you were these people who are in Birmingham and have had their houses bought up for some astonishing sum, 400 million, and then they're now saying, oh, we might not do that part. So you've had to give up your family home for nothing. The whole thing's been a complete catastrophe.
Well, it has been. It has been. And talk about, wasting all this money. What do they do? Can the government afford to get rid of inheritance tax?
I think
that's about 7 billion quid, isn't it?
I know, but then I think in terms of what do they need to entice people to come out and vote for them, 2019 turnout was the lowest ever. There's a survey in the Telegraph to suggest that a lot of voters are totally apathetic. They want a Trump-style figure, particularly in the north, apparently, in the Red Wall. We can question the wisdom of that, but that's what they want. Somebody who gets things done rather than prevaricates. And it's suggesting that 55% of them won't bother to vote at the next general election, which will be an even worse turnout than last time. So it's all problematic. These are all questions I shall be putting to my guests. I've got Daniel Kawczynski in, who is Polish and can talk about this grain deal problem in Ukraine. I'm also going to be speaking to Craig McKinlay, who is the resident kind of backbench Tory hawk on net zero. And we're going to cross to the Liberal Democrat Party conference and speak to Wendy Chamberlain. A couple of interesting points from the Lib Dems. We've got Layla Moran talking about how they do want to rejoin the EU, and Ed Davey saying, no, we don't. Well, which is it? And also, they've made a vote yesterday where they want to erase the word woman and talk about people who menstruate, which is one of my personal bugbears, because would you mind maybe not erasing me and my gender from all of your discussions about this quite important issue?
So I look forward to you putting that question.
And we're in Dover for the People's Panel, who
Catherine's down there,
will be sharing their wisdom as ever.
Yes. Well, they've got...
Richard, sorry.
Oh, go on, keep going.
MI6 boss Richard Dearlove is also going to be chatting to me about the threat from Chinese and indeed Russian spies, and he should know because he was formerly C. If you like James Bond, he was C. He's the big boss. Big former MI6 boss is coming on the show.
Ooh.
I know.
Oh.
That's why we're doing well in the ratings, Steve.
It is why you do.
Good stuff.
You know who you need in?
Who?
Q.
Oh, we do
With all the
need Q.
gadgets. That's what I'd like to see.
We know that C exists and M exists. Did Q ever really exist in real life?
Must do.
All right, somebody write in. GB Views, and tell us, yes, I was Q once back in 1976.
Get you in.
Can you
a
imagine?
heartbeat. It'd be lovely. Thank you. We'll see you at 9:30.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Let's have a look at some of the other stories. Heading into our newsroom this morning, and President Biden has rebuked what he has called extreme Republicans, saying the party's lawmakers have got to take immediate steps to prevent a government shutdown. Biden said that would harm food safety, cancer research and children's programmes.
Let's be clear. If the government shuts down, that means members of Congress, members of the U.S. military are going to have to continue to work and not get paid. A government shutdown could impact everything from food safety to cancer research to Head Start programs for children. Funding the government is one of those basic responsibilities of Congress. And it's time for Republicans to start doing the job America elected them to do.
The Home Secretary is expected to raise the unsustainable pressures created by illegal migration when she makes a 3-day visit to the US this week. In a keynote speech, she's expected to present a blueprint for how countries can combat the crisis and highlight how Britain has led the way to tackling this issue. However, despite the Prime Minister saying stopping the boats is his priority, the UK government's policies, such as sending asylum seekers to Rwanda, have failed to take off. Well, the Italian island of Lampedusa has seen a surge in African migrants arriving illegally on its shores, 11,000 landing in just 1 week. That's on an island with a population of less than 7,000.
It's hard to get your head around, isn't it? Daily Mail contributor Robert Hardman has said that the island sums of European impotence in the face of migration, and he joins us now. Good morning to you. I mean, look, how the EU is dealing with migration is crucial, isn't it? On the basis that, I mean, certainly if Keir Starmer gets his way, he wants their assistance.
Well, it's extraordinary how this really global issue is crystallised on this one tiny island, way south, actually. It's the sort of southernmost point of Europe. Lampedusa is actually much nearer Africa than Sicily, the nearest European landmass. But it is the entry point, if you like. I've spent the week there because, as you say, they've had more than double the population of the island arriving in the space of a week, and you know there is a system there for processing arrivals. It's been going on for many years, but even that was overwhelmed the other day, and it's put the frighteners on both the Italian government and the European Union. So in the last few days, you've seen the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen visiting Lampedusa with the Italian Prime Minister and coming up with a 10-point plan saying this is what we're going to do to tackle this. But no one really believes it can work. No one really believes there's a solution. I mean, it's a very depressing situation. I mean, you meet these people. You know, we see some of them on your screen who've just made this appalling journey across 80 miles of open sea in these very, very unstable, unseaworthy boats. And they're not just from North Africa. I mean, the boats set off from Libya and Tunisia. But I met people who are from West Africa, East Africa, across Asia, from as far afield as Bangladesh, some from Syria. The majority are young men from sub-Saharan Africa, who are taking terrible risks and have generally, the families have saved up for years, and they will send someone north to either Libya or Tunisia to get on one of these boats, and it's the people smugglers are the only beneficiaries of this.
Yeah.
How you stop the boats is something that has perplexed every European administration. But at the moment, they arrive in Italy. It's then what happens next. They can get them off the island of Lampedusa onto the Italian mainland, but what no one can then establish is, well, what's the next stage that's going to stop this?
Well, this issue, it highlights Europe's failure to get to grips with the migration crisis, say impotent. Also highlights the differences between nation states within Europe in how they wish to solve this. We've seen Germany wanting to take a step back in terms of resettlement schemes. They've been unimpressed with Italy's approach. They want to take fewer migrants from Italy and from other countries. What are the different views on the continent? Presumably, there are countries who wish for Europe to essentially close their border and deport those who are attempting this journey, who then land in Lampedusa, and others who are happy for them to, you know, come onto mainland Europe and be processed and go from there. What's the state of affairs between the different nations?
Well, this is why it's reaching a sort of crisis point, because you have some nations, nations like Poland, Hungary, for example, who just said, you know, don't even think about sending any of these people our way. France used to absorb some, but have now said no more. Germany initially, as said last week, no more. Now it's sort of slightly changing its mind. But it's, you know, if you've got at the moment, I mean, just while I was on the island, people arriving at a rate of around 1,000 a day, with these surges of sort of 6,000, 7,000 in a day, it can't go on. And the 10-point plan that the European Commission President was putting forward was that Europe would decide who would take what, and that people would sort of have to accept an allocation. At which point, many EU nations said, "Well, no, we're not going to go with that." And it increasingly boils down to the fact as how do you stop these flotillas leaving in the first place? Well, unless you can take control of the coastal waters of Tunisia and Libya, you can't. And so there's a theory that you've got to go back to the root causes. You've got to make life better in sub-Saharan Africa so that people don't embark on these journeys. As I say, there are no easy answers to this. There are a lot of angry people all along the way and caught in the middle of it. If you meet these the migrants themselves, I mean, frankly, anyone who's gone through that voyage, you have enormous sympathy for what they've endured, and you know, Lampedusa is just caught in the middle. And Robert, if you have another day like we had the other day, then I think you could see you know, things break.
Robert, we've got to leave it there, sadly. Good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Talk about a big gear change. We're going to have one because we're going to be talking Strictly, all the sparkles, and Angela Rippon in just a moment.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30am.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, All you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, at 9:19, we've waited all morning for this. Stephanie is back. We have to talk about Angela Rippon.
On Strictly Come Dancing.
Oh, my goodness.
My, oh my, did Angela do us proud. She's been dubbed the Queen of Legs, and rightly so.
Unbelievable.
Rightly
Here we
so.
go.
Last night she was doing the cha-cha-cha with her partner Kai Widrington, and she managed to recreate that famous high kick that she did on Morecambe and Wise back in 1976. I'm a woman in my 30s and there's no way I can get my legs up as high as Angela did last night. She impressed both the audience and the judges, who gave her a standing ovation.
Here we go, look at it go.
Look, oh.
It's nearly 12 o'clock.
I mean, honestly, well, look, she's been dancing for a very,
Yeah.
very long time. She is incredibly fit.
Yes, and
But that, Frank, come on, Angela, well done you.
Something else. She's
Give her a
been
little clap for that.
tipped to make it all the way to the final,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
hope she does, because I've always said with Strictly, they always tend to make fun of older contestants as a kind of joke act, but clearly Angela's in it to win it, but she is going to face stiff competition, because Nigel Harman from Casualty, he topped the leaderboard, and he done an impressive paso doble yesterday, and it was incredible watching him and Katia Jones get on the dance floor yesterday. So it's going to be really stiff competition. We've had former tennis star Annabelle Croft as well. She had a nice little tennis setup for her dance as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
every single dancer out there is trying to win it. And then we have the same-sex couple, Leighton Williams and Nikita Kazum, who are also showing that maybe potentially this might be the season we have a first all-male Strictly couple who lift the glitterball trophy.
Doesn't Annabelle Croft look amazing? She hasn't aged
does.
today. I know her daughter. I used to work with her daughter, who is lovely, and honest to God, they look identical.
Oh, well, this, you know, dancing is going to be healing for Annabelle Croft, because she only lost her husband early this year, and she's saying that being on the show is going to be hopefully some way to help her grief. But let's spare a thought for Les Dennis as well. He's at the bottom of the leaderboard. But the thing about Strictly is all about trying. It's all about dancing. This week, the audience will not be voting, so all the scores will just roll over to next week.
Oh,
so
really?
next week is when we're going to see our first couple leave the dance floor.
So everyone gets a second chance.
So everyone gets...
That's nice. How long has Strictly been going on for now?
This is now the 21st series.
Wow.
So,
really?
you know, I love Strictly because when it comes in, it just ushers in autumn, and it's just cosy nights and watching everyone dance on the dance floor. So good luck to Angela.
How did Bobby Brazier do?
He did really well. Him and Angela both scored 29 points. So
right.
Bobby Brazier is another name people are tipping to do well, because he's got a younger audience, and these are the kind of people who will pick up the phone and vote. So let's see, but it's going to be stiff competition. I say from watching week one, everyone looks incredible. Everyone looks like they're really picking up all the good techniques for the dance floor.
tell you what, it's a lot of work.
Do you think the standard has gone up
I think
over the
standard
years?
has gone up, and I think celebrities care how they come across on the show, because it's all about the reputation. No one really wants to be laughed at, because they do get a lot of criticism on social media and people pry into their lives. So, you know, when they're on the dance floor, it's their chance to really shine.
I tell you what about security in all of this, which I find very... Because I got an email from Angela yesterday morning. I sent her a little email to say, good luck.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of you. And she emailed back and said, we're locked in the studios, locked in the building. And that was like 11 o'clock this morning. So she was like, there's no escape.
Yeah, it's the first... Because it's the first live show, I'm sure they have to just cross all their T's and make sure everything is well. And even on the front of the Sun, they're talking about... Apparently, the contestants were talking about ghosts in the studios.
Really?
So I don't know what's going on there, but it all sounds pretty haunting.
Oh, well, literally.
Brilliant.
Well, there you go. I mean, you've got to say, when you know people in it, and Angela working here, you just got to say, fingers crossed. And she is a legend.
She is.
Who did... which paper was it had living... Because of that high kick, living leg end.
Living leg end.
But I can't...
Oh, here it is, in the Express.
Oh, it's in the Express. Yeah. There you go, with that great shot. But there you go, talking about your career going... I mean, she was 31 or 32 when she did that in Morecambe and Wise.
78, the most oldest contestant on Strictly Come Dancing. And what I love about the show is they always get newsreaders or people who are in the news to show their best moves. So, Emily or Stephen, one day you guys might be on the dance floor.
Fingers crossed, eh?
Oh, would you like to do it?
Well, why not?
I think I'd be the joke contestant.
No, I think you got moves. Moves like Jagger.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think?
I think
it's remarkable that they don't buckle under the pressure.
Yeah.
Well, they do get paid a pretty nice paycheck.
Do they?
To go on Strictly. So...
All right, I'll do it then.
I'm
in. Stephanie, thanks very much indeed. Breakfast is back tomorrow at 6. Come on, the Tomlins here next.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, today, very different day to yesterday. Spells of heavy rain, especially across the northern half of the UK. Best of any brightness, really, across the south. So as we start the day, got this area of rain across parts of Wales and the Midlands. This will gradually spread its way northwards as we go through the course of the morning, turning quite heavy at times, and then this rain will then transfer into Northern Ireland and Scotland through the afternoon. A thoroughly wet afternoon to come here. But further south, actually, it starts to turn a bit drier and brighter. Increasing amounts of sunshine, especially down